Ladies and gentlemen, it all comes down to this. Welcome to the grand finals of the $100,000 N4C main event between Lidakor and the Beastie QT. Spawning in on the right side is Beastie QT playing as the Rus in blue, and on the left it is Lidakor playing as the English in red. The two players have met before in the Swiss stage. In that set, Beastie took down Lidakor 3-1, but we have seen a completely renewed Lidakor in the playoffs. A player that we have basically never seen in the Swiss stage, very dominant, clean gameplay. He was able to take down Mista 4-3 in the quarterfinals, and then he pulled a major upset, taking down Marine Lord 4-1, and now he's in the grand finals over here. Meanwhile, on the other side, Beastie was the second place in the Swiss stage. This way, he got into the semifinals directly, and then he took down Vortex 4-3 in a crazy and competitive set. With the Rus being on the battlefield, you see the dance for the sheep, and of course, the deer begin. It's going to be some sheep taken down here from both sides. Deer also secured. So with that, you're going to have a decent amount of bounty for a Rus player to start with. Some of the deer were taken down by the English players, so I would estimate the bounty for Beastie to be currently around 60, 70-ish, but he's yet to find some wolves to work with. He was quite successful finding sheep, which is always a nice backup, but the more important thing for him, of course, is that he's gonna have the dock up already, I believe. English versus Rus is a matchup that we have seen in this tournament before on this map. In particular, Lidakor played this matchup in the semifinals, I believe, and in that matchup, he actually lost this. The only game that Lidakor lost in the semifinals was Mongolian Heights. He played English versus the Rus of Marine Lord. So curious to see how Lidakor is going to change up his game plan compared to that, because that was by far his weakest game, and when I was casting that, I really didn't understand why he's going to be using English here. Of course, he might just want to use Rus elsewhere, but the thing that I was a little shocked about when we saw the quarterfinals or the semifinals here is that Rus wasn't basically used at all for him. So I wasn't exactly sure what was the motivation of him picking the English over here, not the Rus. We'll have to see if he has some sort of game plan coming in here for him, because in the semifinals, we didn't really see any spectacular things from him on this map. With that being said, we do have Lidakor operating with 2 scouts. That's a mandatory thing against a player that is going for the hunt, of course, with the Rus. He was able to aggro 1 wolf, and now he's going to dance around those deers, making sure that Beastie cannot finish them off. But of course, Beastie now with 2 scouts, he can one-shot deer, so Lidakor can give up on that one. He's not going to be able to take away any bounty from the opponent here. Once you have 2 scouts for a Rus, they will just one-shot the deer, and there is going to be no chance for it to take it away. And there is actually 3 wolves aggroed as well by Beastie. He's sitting at 185 bounty, and now he's trying to hunt that wolf that's trailing the scout of Lidakor. If he's able to get that kill, that would be massive. And you see, he's just shooting it once, making it just enough HP so that he can shoot it with 2 scouts in 1 arrow each. And this way, Lidakor wasn't able to turn around and kill it. That was some very nice mathematics being done over there for him. If he shoots it with both scouts, it would be 1 shot, so Lidakor turns around and kills it. So he first just shot it once, that puts it into 6 HP, and then you're going to kill that with 2 arrows, 1 from each scout. Walls are coming up in the middle. Looks like Lidakor is going to wall off the central part as well. This was a thing that did not work out for him in the semifinals, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to have the walls come up for Beastie as well. The scout is harassing the villager in the middle. Quite a lot of fishing ships out there, 6 to be precise. First longbows on the way. And if Lidakor ever wants to get anything out of this longbow aggression, he has to be very aggressive here. So forward tower potentially, try to make sure that you maximize the damage output of those longbows. And holy potatoes, is there a lot of sheep. That's 24 sheep underneath the town center. So even if the fishing eco gets denied, that's going to be a lot of backup food to work with. Lidakor turned around for a brief moment, but then he realized that this villager is so low HP that he can finish it off. That's the first villager casualty of the grand finals. Tutelage is in for both players. We should see some fishing ships converted into combat vessels. No signs of that so far though, so we'll have to wait a tiny bit for that. Looks like the scouts of Beastie will find the walling villager of Lidakor, so Lidakor won't be able to wall off the southern part. And on the northern side, we also see some walls come up for our blue player first Beastie. He's got his first combat ship out, picks off 1 longbowman, and this way he's gonna be able to push away the longbows from the riverfront. Might be able to even kill that villager, but as he sees the longbows closing in, he's not going to commit. On the right side, Lidakor still harassing the walling villas of Beastie, but you see the problems of the English here once again. You're trying to inflict some damage to that fishing eco, but every second that fishing eco stays alive, is just going to be more and more economy for Beastie to work with, and he can just start adding knights to deal with your longbows, and that's exactly what his game plan is right now. He's coming in with the Vos, and beautiful move once again, pulling the combat ship, making sure that the opponent cannot push the longbows up, and this way he cannot make the Vos. Lidakor wanted to wall off this central crossing here, but by having the combat ship being pulled over here, you push away the longbows and prevent the villager from walling as well. Looks like another walling villager could fall victim to the scout of Lidakor here up north. That's a very low HP vill, and Lidakor should be able to finish it off. So Beastie lost 2 villagers trying to wall this one, but as weird as it sounds like, it actually still makes sense for him and it's totally worth it. Because his eco is still better thanks to the fishing eco, and of course making sure that those walls are standing is very important, because now the longbows have no chance of crossing. The walls are incomplete potentially, and the villager does get picked off. This is the 3rd villager that Beastie is gonna lose. Looks like a couple of fishing ships are being pulled to repair the combat vessel over here. He's getting another volley out, but the fishing ships aren't able to start the repairs. He's trying to snipe the villager on the left side, loses the Logio attack ship in the process, loses 1 scout, loses a 2nd scout, and you gotta wonder if this was a little too greedy here from Beastie, because suddenly he just lost a combat ship and 2 scouts here, and his opponent will still be able to finish the wars. Now, as you could see, Beastie was really successful collecting sheep. This is not something that we can say about Lidakor, however. Lidakor barely has any sheep underneath his town center. Now, of course, being English, he can start adding farming eco, but still, that's going to be a big investment at the beginning. Longbow is now in large numbers, and this is a difference compared to what we have seen from him in the semifinals. He's a lot more committed to longbow production, a lot more consistent and larger numbers, and suddenly, those volleys are doing a lot more damage. In the semifinals, he had a smaller group of longbows used for this, and because of that, he wasn't really able to take down the fishing ships that easily. Now he's wiping them out, and maybe, just maybe, Lidakor is in a great spot here. Because even though Beastie had the eco advantage, he's now losing the fishing ships, he now has to sail all the way north, and the knight came through the walls. The walls are incomplete, which means that the knights can start getting into the eco of Lidakor, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Lidakor making a barracks, sending some spears out, and trying to wall that southern crossing off, because now it's gonna be a matter of whether or not the players can finish the walls. Looks like longbows are once again opening up, and the fishing ships just can't find a place to fish at, and as you see, that's only 3 of them left in the middle. Make it 2 most likely with the next volley coming out. And this is a thing that we have seen the English being capable of, in the qualifiers especially. English can pick off the fishing eco of any civilization here with the longbows. This was used very frequently against Delhi. But this did not work out in the main event so far for basically any players. Mostly the Rus were able to take them down, but it looks like the start is great for Lidakor. Now he's getting his longbows intercepted by knights though. He's gonna be able to wall off this crossing though, so I think, as weird as it sounds like, this fight is still worth it for him, because at least the knights are not focusing on the villager walling. Knights will be taken down eventually by those longbows, and the walls will be complete for Lidakor, and we're getting into a stage where Beastie has no fishing eco, and he's up against an English player that's going to be farming. Which means that the food eco for the English player will skyrocket compared to the Rus. Second TC is up for Beastie. He's realizing that, okay, he's not gonna have a ton of fishing eco working for him, so the best thing he can do is play 2 town centers, and this way start building up a villager lead. Longbow still poking away at that combat ship out there. All they want to do is pick off the fishing ships though, so you gotta be careful. There's a new combat ship coming out for Beastie from that dock, still trying to push away the longbows. You could really justify a tower here if you want to push this one for Lidakor, like right next to that gold mine, so that you can boost the attack rate of your archers, make them even more powerful against all those fishing ships. Combat ships are still out there, but Lidakor shouldn't really care about those. What he needs to care about is the fishing eco. There's still one knight roaming the map here, so you gotta be careful if you're Lidakor. Beastie is charging in. He's gonna get no villager kills though. Villagers actually fire back with their bows. Now that knight is very low HP, so it's not going to be able to inflict a ton of damage. Lidakor will probably try to snipe that low HP Vil, which is a villager that Beastie should just pull back to the town center. Looking at the resources, Beastie is getting ready to go to Castle Age. Lidakor isn't far away either. His food eco is not spectacular right now, only 360, 390 per minute, but it's increasing steadily, and of course, the longer the game goes, the better that English farming is going to be. Looks like Beastie is back with that knight, but it's going to get picked off. One villager died though. You can see the dead body for a brief moment, so he was able to get something for that knight. He was able to pick off a villager. Looks like villager count-wise, we do have a 7 villager deficit for Lenok. But of course, if he goes to Castle Age, he's going to have the King's Palace as his second town center. Beastie is on the way to Castle Age with the Abbey of the Trinity, which means he's going for the relics. He has 3 relics on his side, so he can fill that into the not the Regnitz Cathedral, but the Abbey of the Trinity. The other 2 relics on the other side of the river are basically inaccessible for him, with walls up for Lenok in all 3 crossings. Lenok getting that English farming eco going, as we have him getting closer and closer to Castle Age as well. I wonder if on the north the walls are complete for Beastie, because we have seen some efforts from Lenok to try and stop those walling efforts with some scouts, with some longbows. So I actually wonder if the walls were completed by Beastie. I think they were, but Lenok is heading that way, so that's why I'm suspecting that there could be something out there. The longbows are heading north. Maybe he's suspecting that Beastie has a sneaky fishing eco on the right side. That could be a possibility. He's going to find 1 fishing ship, but that's basically it. It's still value, of course, but this is one of the problems that Lenok is facing. This entire shoreline is very long, and covering that entirely with longbows is going to be difficult. Looks like the tower does get denied here by the Lodya attack ships, thanks to the fact that longbows were not nearby. Castle Age on the way for Lenok, and that's going to be the King's Palace coming in, so both players will be operating on 2 town centers, meaning that the villager deficit that Lenok has, which is 10, is going to be a steady difference between the 2 players. Beast is also going very heavy on the eco upgrades. You can see at the top of the screen, he's researching horticulture, he's researching the lumberjacking upgrade and the mining upgrade as well. So he really is focusing on his eco. He knows fully well that his opponent isn't going to be pushing him anytime soon. So he's just going to come down to grabbing as many eco upgrades as he can, making sure that his villager count is as high as possible. The villager was picked off near that tower, but the tower is almost complete. So you gotta wonder if a new villager will be pulled to finish that tower. I would think yes, especially now that the combat ships were pushed away by the longbows. Indeed, the tower is going to be complete, and if you place a springald emplacement on it, it's going to make it very difficult for any ship popping out of that dock to survive for long. Beastie 55 villagers, 41 only for Lenok. He's just reached Castle Age. He's going to open up against those Lodya attack ships once again with the longbows. He's trying to make sure that the opponent cannot get through those walls at all, at least for the time being. Now, one thing that you have to consider here is that the late game unit composition for the Rus is deadly. Post-Imperial, with the long-range springolds, the Streltsy, the horse archers, the knights, that's a combination that even the English have a very difficult time to deal with. On the other hand, the English have an absolutely juggernaut late-game economy, with the enclosures on the farms very population efficient, great food eco. So this is going to be a tricky matchup for both players, because neither of these civilizations really want to fight against the opponent in Imperial, because both the English and the Rus have some great things going for them in Imp, especially if we are going to see the Wingard Palace from the English player going into Imperial, which would mean that he would have a ton of trebuchets to work with. So this is going to be an interesting one to take a look at, because it looks like we're going into late game. Neither of the players have the power to get through those walls right now. Longbows will take down most of the fishing eco, and I think Beast is about to try and open up the middle. I really feel like a transport ship could be a very cheeky and very sneaky move, especially for Beastie. He has fishing ships that he can convert into transports, and if he does that, he could potentially sneak through a couple of knights and get some raiding damage going. This is not something that he thought about. Of course, Lenok could add a dock and make a transport ship himself, but that would be easy to spot for the opponent. But for the Rus, if you think about it, it's a civilization that can convert any ship into anything. Might as well convert a fishing ship into a transport ship, and then just transport your knights over, and then you suddenly have some raiding capacity. And keep in mind that Beastie has the villager lead, so if he can start raiding, suddenly things could get pretty bad for Lenok. Mangonel now coming out for him. He's going to have relic number 3 as well, which means that the eco of Beast is substantially better than the eco of Lenok right now. Lenok, of course, great food eco thanks to being English, but that's basically it for him. Gold eco is not spectacular, and Beastie is committing all those resources into army production. We're seeing some knights, we're seeing some mangonels appear on the battlefield. Warrior Monk will be picked off by the longbows for the time being, but that was just a diversion, and I love that move. He pushes the opponent's longbows to the south by having the diversion of the Warrior Monk burning down the walls, and this gives a window for those knights to break in on the north. The initial plan was to break in on the north no matter what, and now he's going for a relic. Beastie is going for a relic here. Cheeky little play, but you gotta get the every bit of advantage that you can possibly grab. And that's exactly what he's doing right now. He's even killing the boar, so he's going to get 75 bounty, pushing him very close to that 500 mark. And he picked up the relic. The great relic haste by Beastie is coming in, and you gotta wonder if he will try the 5th relic on the left side. That would be even crazier. If he could get to 5 relics, that would be an absolute crazy scenario for him. Woes are coming up for Lidakor. He knows that he can't protect his South River, but Beastie is gonna be like, okay, whatever, you can vote yourself in. I'm just going to start the Sacred Site countdown, and with that, force you out of your base. Some knights are on the battlefield now for Lidakor, but he's behind by 12 villagers, and what's more concerning is that there is going to be 4 relics that he's gonna be up against, as well as 2 Sacred Sites from the opponent. First knight goes down here from Lidakor. He's just sending it in to try and decap the Sacred Site, but as the knights are closing in, he is going to be repelled for the time being. 10 minutes countdown has started. As you see at the bottom left of the screen, from this point on, Lidakor has to neutralize one of those Sacred Sites in 10 minutes, and Beastie made a castle in the middle, which is going to prevent the enemies from crossing, but truth being told, I think he could have gotten a castle up on the right side, right next to that Sacred Site, and put his opponent into a very difficult position. Because if that castle goes up over there, suddenly, Lidakor is gonna have to take that down before he can decap the Sacred Site. Knights once again using their mobility to poke around, making sure that Lidakor stays back at home with some forces. Lidakor is mining stone, and he's got quite a lot of food in the bank as well. Knights are also coming in from the left side. I think they broke through at the southern part as well. Because you see, there is something missing in that wall on the south for Lidakor. So I'm suspecting that the Knights also managed to break through from the south, and here comes the raid. This is not something that Lidakor has spotted, and Beastie is gonna be able to start harassing those villagers. And as I said, on the right side, there is an opening as well very soon. So suddenly this two-pronged attack is going to start killing villagers left and right. Lidakor's got the Knights himself to defend this, but of course his entire eco is right now idle, and you see Beastie just trying to isolate his forces as much as possible from the opponent. He even tried hiding them to make sure that Lidakor isn't able to take them down, but with that he's just jumping on the gold mine, and you gotta wonder if he's willing to sacrifice his army over here for the sake of killing villagers, because I think he could. He could easily say, okay, I'm going to give up on 6 knights, take down 10 villagers, and then just call it a day. He already has quite a significant villager lead here. We're talking about 23, and we're also talking about 4 relics, and the 5th one is just not being brought in. There is a warrior monk at the south that's bringing in the 5th relic. Beastie was able to secure all 5, and he's in a commanding position in game number 1. The spearmen do brace for impact, but this is a fight that Beastie is actually taking here. Somewhat surprising of a decision here, given the fact that he's up against so many spears. Looks like he's going to retreat for the time being. 7.5 minutes left to go soon for Lidakor to decap a Sacred Site, but he's got the military advantage over here on this battlefield, so I think he's about to decap this one right side, but Beastie's gonna be more than happy with this. He's gonna be more than happy. He will just say, okay, whatever, you can decap this, because one thing I have is resources for Imperial Age, and the second thing I have is resources for Newcastle. And honestly, given the fact that the way to the base of Lidakor on the south is open, you could potentially even think about a forward castle close to his base. He's once again getting raided on the left side by the forces of Beastie, and on the way to Imperial is going to be Beastie QT. Lidakor decaps the Sacred Site, but his eco was rampaged by Knights left and right. You see, Knights are still killing villagers, throwing torches at those farms, and the Knights from the right side are also coming back. There are some gold miners over here that could be prime targets for that raid, and that once again will be 5, 6, 7 villagers killed, if not more. The Knights didn't expect those villagers to be in there. You could see that the Knights were just close to the gold mine, so they didn't use their charge. Only after they reached the gold mine, they started attacking. If Beastie was controlling them manually, he could have charged in with those Knights. He only got 1 villager kill, but he forces his opponent off from gold, and that's a good start for him. Beastie desperately needs a market because he's floating so much gold. I mean, he's got 1 Sacred Site and 5 relics. That's 600 gold per minute consistently. And we haven't even mentioned the fact that he's also mining gold, right? Lidakor is not far away from Imperial either in terms of food count, but the gold count is a concern. And as you see, right now, Lidakor doesn't have safe access to gold. This gold mine on the north was harassed. This one is inaccessible on the right side. The left side is also somewhat inaccessible because of all of its raids. And because of this, Lidakor's Imperial Age time will be heavily delayed, and this is giving a huge window right now for Beastie because he's building up an Imperial Age army. We don't really see huge numbers from him, to be honest. It's only 2 Knights, 1 Crossbowman, 1 Springald, and 5 Mangonels. So this could just be a train of mangonels at this point, knowing that the opponent has mostly just longbows as his army. Some knights are out there for Lenok. Actually, Lenok has a ton of knights, now that I see it. 14 knights, overchop on the wood line coming in. Beast is going to see the stables being built. He's also going to get some raiding damage done here. Kills one villager, potentially. Yep, that's going to be one villager. He also sees that the opponent has quite a lot of knights, and this is something that he's going to have to react to, and he's doing that with Streltsy. Knights and Streltsy, a deadly combination for the Rus here. Very difficult for Lenok to deal with. Lenok is getting close to Imperial though, so the window may not be completely closed, but this is gonna be a difficult fight for him to have, because Beastie is already up to Imperial and he's getting an Imperial Age army going. Elite Knight yet to be finished for Beastie. He has gotten all 5 relics though, so he can technically just sit back and wait, but we have to keep in mind that you don't really want the English player to kick off that Imperial Age economy either, because once you get to Imperial, the English farms will also generate gold passively. And one of the advantages of that is that the entire economy of the English will be very population efficient. You don't need as many villagers because your food gatherers are basically your gold source as well. So you have more population space for army, and that's one of the more underappreciated facts about the English or not pastures, but the enclosures upgrade on their farms. Multiple layers of walls coming in here for Beastie, as he's once again trying to get a raid going. Lenok is also turtling forward with a couple layers of palisades, but we are seeing some spears being added now. Beast is realizing that his opponent is going for knights, and there is the forward castle coming in. That's going to be the foothold right next to that tower. And Beastie ready to start pushing into the base of the opponent. Lenok is on the way to Imperial. I wonder if it's the Berkshire Palace or the Wingard Palace that he's using to go up, as Beastie is just now dropping the farming eco. Should be... I mean, in this scenario, you can understand both. The Berkshire would help protect the base of Lenok, but it's going to be the Wingard. It's the Wingard Palace because, in the long run, having access to cheap siege weapons, the trebuchets, is immensely helpful. And we have seen the emergence of the Wingard Palace more and more in this tournament, because players are starting to realize that trebuchets coming at a massive discount is a very good way to get rid of the opponent's buildings. Scout gets taken down from Lenok here, second castle on the way for Beastie. He has gotten a foothold over here for himself, and he's got quite a lot of mangonels behind those palisades. He's slowly turtling forward. This is the thing that plays to his biggest strengths. He loves to play this playstyle. Slow, steady grind forward, inch by inch crawl forward, and just grind down your opponent. Layers and layers of walls, dozens of castles, and this is something that Lenok is gonna have a tough time fighting against. Now, truth being told, he's got quite a lot of cavalry, but I don't think that he knows about the spearman force of Beastie just yet. Beastie getting his spears on the battlefield. He's also got some Streltsy behind them, and that's a very dangerous combination. He hasn't gotten the March upgrade just yet for the Streltsy though. That could be a little helpful for him, but he's focusing on army numbers right now. He's almost at 200 population, so he's gonna have to start grabbing some more upgrades. In terms of blacksmith upgrades, Beast is also lacking quite a few of them, whereas for Lenok, same thing for him, so both of the players still lacking quite a lot of blacksmith upgrades here, as we do have... What am I looking at on the right side? Why are the mangonels shooting Beastie's own ship? Did we see enemy in it trying to attack the ship? I don't know. That was so weird. That was so weird. Okay, that was something. I think it was a boar, actually. Yeah, it was a boar, because the bounty increased for Beastie. It was difficult to spot, but he found himself another boar that's 75 extra gold, and now he's steadily above that tier 3 mark, so he's got the tier 3 bounty with the extra food gathering. He's got a single bombard shelling buildings, and he was able to take down one keep. It doesn't really seem like Lenok cares about this one, or he just doesn't feel like he's ready to fight this, because he's definitely letting his opponent slowly take down those buildings. And keep in mind, starting town center, Wingard Palace, and the council hall, that's 3 out of your 4 landmarks. So you don't necessarily want to lose all of them, because if you lose that many landmarks, you could be in trouble. Now, one of the problems of the Rus is that they don't have stone walls, which means that no matter how many layers of palisades they're going for, they can always be burnt down. And I think that could be Lenok's plan. Now, this is going to be spotted by Beastie, and Beastie's gonna have to drop probably 3 more layers of walls over here, and he needs a demolition ship above all. He needs a demo, because this way he could sink that army, but most importantly, he needs to realize that his opponent is committing everything that he's got to this push. The walls were not deleted still here. Lidakor cannot delete his walls. Now he's deleting them. He's pushing the first layer. There's 3 layers to go. There's going to be defensive towers coming in for Beastie. He's going to have to slow this down as much as possible. And then just understand the fact that he needs to race towards the opponent's landmarks. He already took down one. A second one could be taken down. His army is mispositioned though. In fact, he's switching to the north, which means that the cavalry of Lidakor could potentially take down the bombard. He loses the bombard on the battlefield, which means that Lidakor buys himself some time. He gets through the second layer. Third layer coming in, but the spearmen do close in. And the Streltsy are also opening fire. I don't think that Lidakor is going to be able to get through. The spearmen just flood into that position. And with the Streltsy firing, the castle firing, towers, and the spearmen now, this is not going to be a fight that Lidakor can win. Lidakor, however, forces the opponent to move to the north, which slows down the direct push into his base. New layers being built here by Beastie. As I said, demolition ships would be immensely helpful here to try and discourage any kind of crossing on the north. New castle, once again in the making by Beastie, as Lidakor is tempted to charge in again. He's trying to get through those walls. New layers being built with the suicide builders out there. They will die if those cavalry units get through the walls, but they're willing to give their lives for the walls of Beastie, it seems. Beastie's got some Streltsy back here, he's got some spearmen back here, and he seems to be confident holding this position, at least for a time being. And he's also pushing the middle, let's not forget that. Bombards and Mangonels now setting up. The starting town center is under fire, and the farms are also being burned down, so Lidakor is starting to lose a significant portion of his economy. Both players at around 200 population, and now Beastie is rewalling the north. Looks like his opponent is switching to the central part. He might try to snipe down those siege weapons. He needs to snipe down those siege weapons to be precise, because his landmarks are being taken down. Siege weapons now setting up here for Beastie. He did not expect the cavalry to come back though, and that's going to be an absolutely gigantic loss here for Beastie. The cavalry is jumping on the Mangonels. There is going to be at least 2 or 3 Mangonels taken down here. Cavalry finding all of those siege weapons completely unprotected, and Beastie is going to get pushed back for the time being. Looks like only 2 Mangonels were taken down, and all the Springolds make it out alive. Now the Spearmen and the Streltsy are back though, and Beastie once again has that strength in that direct push. He's got the Mangonels, he's got the Streltsy, he's got the Spearman. He just needs some heavy siege. Talk about trebuchets, talk about bombards to take down landmarks with, because that's something that he is missing. Looks like Lidakor is swinging south with the cavalry. He's going to try the same trick again. In this case, he's going to do it on the south. There is one Lodi attack ship to try and slow this down, but that's going to be pretty much unsuccessful stopping this. There are some walls for Beastie for contingency back at home, so it's going to be a little more difficult for that cavalry to do damage. And you gotta wonder, as I said, that if Beastie starts committing against this one, he could take down the landmarks before Lidakor is able to even get to his base. Still no heavy siege coming in here from Beastie. He's just now setting up some trebuchets as he's grabbing the... Is that the elite spearman upgrade still missing? That's a bit of an issue here for Beastie. It's queued up behind a bunch of units. Trebuchets are now setting up though. New layers of walls being scrambled up by Beastie. That's a long wall to make though, and by the time he gets there, his initial walls might be burned down. I don't think that he's gonna get those walls up. Trebuchets, however, shelling the key landmarks, and I believe we're getting closer and closer to Lidakor losing all his landmarks, and it's a trap. It's a trap. The walls are coming up. Lidakor still thinks that there is an opening, but there is not. There is not a single place where that cavalry can go. They're being chased by Spearmen and Streltsy, and now that cavalry is stranded there. They're unable to get back home. They are surrounded. And suddenly, we're looking at the landmarks of Lidakor being taken down. Beastie is grinding down his opponent, and Lidakor doesn't have the power back at home to defend this. He's trying to push on the north as well, bumping into walls. Looks like there was an overchop, though. Bit of a blunder there for Beastie. He's gonna have to react to those cavalry units now flooding into his base. But on the other side, it's not like Lidakor has enough power to stop this. That's the problem for Lidakor. He's able to get some raiding done here potentially, but there are towers, there are castles, there are spearmen chasing all those cavalry units. And you gotta wonder how Lidakor is going to stop the push inside his base. Only the King's Palace remains as his only landmark. And the King's Palace is within reach. I think the trebuchets can set up and start shelling it. So it's now or never for Lidakor. He needs to take down those trebuchets, otherwise he will lose his landmarks, and with that, the game. Trebuchet is not setting up to fire just yet. Castle being built by Beastie. He's crawling more and more forward. Tower after tower. Castle after castle. And this is a very difficult position for Lidakor to push. So many fortifications here for Beastie. And he's... I don't think that he sees the King's Palace just yet. Although he may have scouted that beforehand. I think he should know that it's somewhere at the back. and if he gets a little closer, he can get a vision on it. Once again, the cavalry breaks into Beastie's base, but he's setting up against the King's Palace, and I don't think that Lidakor noticed this. I don't think Lidakor noticed that he's losing all his landmarks. The next volley is going to finish off that King's Palace, and with that, it's going to be game over. And am I seeing Beastie just sitting there saying, look, it's game over? Yeah, you could see that. You could see that. Beastie just takes down the landmark, and he's like, oh yeah, I got this. I got this. And indeed, he has it. What a play. I don't think that Lidakor realized that he just lost all of his landmarks. That's the thing. And with that, now we have game number 1 in the hands of Beastie. Convincing game here, despite the fact that Lidakor's start was great. Lidakor was able to do quite a lot of damage to the fishing eco, but then Beastie just walled up, and I think the key thing becomes the fact that he was able to secure 5 relics. 5 relics with the Rus here, and a completely untouched economy back at home, whereas for Lidakor, he was suffering from raids left and right, lost some gold miners, lost some farmers, and ultimately his opponent was able to beat him to Imperial. And of course, Rus late game unit composition, talk about Springolds, talk about the ability to add Straltsi, the Spearman, of course. He was just ground down, and it really didn't seem like Lidakor was able to see that his landmarks are being taken down. Because he seemed to be pretty focused on his cavalry gameplay. You could see that he was constantly microing those cavalry units, making sure that he's avoiding the spearmen, and I think he didn't realize that his base was getting pushed. Because it's not like a bunch of units flooded into his base and just killed everything. It was a slow and grindy push by Beastie. Something that's actually difficult to see on the minimap even, because you barely see any change on the minimap at your base. So if you're not looking there, you don't even notice that Beastie pushed up the trebs, and now he's shelling your town center, and of course he's got a castle protecting those trebs. With that, Beastie takes game number 1 in this best of 9. Still 4 more for him to go to be the champion of N4C. Lidakor down 1 game as we go into game number 2 on the home map of Lidakor. Welcome back to Beastie QT versus Lidakor, game number 2 on the home map of Lidakor. Spawning in on the left side is going to be Beastie QT playing as the French in blue, and on the right side we'll have Lidakor playing as the Mongols in red. We're going to have a Mongol versus French matchup, something that's so common, so popular, and a matchup that we have seen both the Mongols and the French prevail in. The map is going to be King of the Hill, a traditional place for this matchup, as we do have the town center right next to the Ovu for Lidakor. That's a great place for him to be in, because he's going to have the pastures very efficient. However, his gold mines are disturbingly far away, and that's going to be a concern. So Lidakor took the trade-off. He's going to have the town center close to the Ovu, but of course that's going to mean that the gold mines are very far away. Meanwhile, on the other side, this map is actually great for Beastie. If you look at the map spawn that Beastie has, this actually looks suspiciously like a map that we have seen before. I would have sworn that I have seen this map in one of the tournament games before. I wouldn't bet my life on it, but I have like an 80% certainty that I've seen this map before, and I think it was a Marine Lord game. And if you look at these two deer, I am fairly certain that you had a player going professional scouts in a set before with the same deer layout and the same double gold mines at the back. If any of you that is watching it right now has seen a set, like probably seen most of my casts, I'm assuming that not a lot of people saw all of the casts I did, because it's like, what, 100 hours worth of material? But in case you remember, I'm curious to see if you remember a matchup like this as well, because it's actually possible that this seed was already used in the tournament. In theory, repeated map seeds should not be a thing, but you never know. Because one thing that we have to clarify is that in order to make sure that the map spawns are fair, these are admin given seeds to the players. Of course, the players do not know what seed they are playing on before the set starts, but the idea is that this way, they ensure that the maps that are given to the players are relatively fair. It cannot be perfectly fair, but it's going to be relatively fair at least. Beastie is going to see the forward villager coming in here from the Lidakor, and on the right side, you see some spears also join the party. Lidakor is trying to yoink a couple of sheep from the back of that scout at the Khan. This is something that he can really do, because if you think about it, the damage output of the Dark Age Khan is so low that it barely does more damage than the healing ability of the scout, so you really can't kill the scout with the Khan. Best thing you can do is take down a couple of sheep from the opponent. So it looks like we are going to have the villager being pulled over here. So far, Lidakor wasn't able to drop a tower though, and his opponent is already up to Feudal Age. Beastie sees the villager coming forward. The tower is probably going up on the gold mine. And of course, We're going to see some archers pop out here for Beastie. He knows very well, oh, there is the mining camp being deleted. That's a great move. So before the mining camp would be shot or damaged by the Mongol player, you delete it, and this way you ensure that the opponent cannot get the raiding bounty for the Mongols here. And the next response is probably going to be scouts and archers. We have seen that multiple times done by the French players. Scouts will be your cheap torch unit, and then the archers will just be there to pick off the villager and the spearman. You see Beastie is dancing around with those scouts. Look at that cheeky micro left and right. He's trying to damage that tower before it goes up. Even just a tiny bit of damage is something that is going to help for him. He's about 70% up to feudal age. He's going to have to abandon that wood line potentially because it's quite close to the tower. But the key question is how much wood he's able to grab before he has to evacuate his wood line. He's at 240 right now. What you're aiming for is basically the ability to drop one archer range and get 2 or 3 archers out. If you get that, you're perfectly fine. Now, Beastie's food eco isn't spectacular either. It's only 170 per minute right now. He's scrambling for wood. I think Beastie is deliberately chopping more wood than what he needs right now because he knows that he needs to bank up some wood to make sure that if he loses that wood line, or more precisely when he loses that wood line, he's going to have a nice wood bank. So you see, he has pulled a lot of villagers to the wood line just to make sure that he's going to have as large of a bank of it as possible. And that's a clever idea. We're going to have the archer range being rushed up with no less than 9 villagers, and now he's going to send them over, potentially for sheep and a new wood line. He's still chopping some trees. Chop it as long as you still have it. That's the idea here for Beastie, and that's exactly what he's going to do right now. First archer's coming out. The tower is likely going to be completed before the archer pops out, but no further towers should be allowed. Archer is able to get one shot out on the villager before the tower goes up, and now you're gonna have to pull your villagers away. But the key thing here for Beastie is that he's got the wood in the bank to be able to get the archers out. That's a nice lumber camp as well on the other side, quite far away from the town center, but it's at a safe spot. Now this will be spotted by Lidakor, so he's gonna know that the opponent is right there, but getting a tower on the other side of the base of Beastie is going to be quite challenging, especially with now scouts and archers being nearby. Deer Stone's on the way for Lidakor, and he's dropping a stable as we speak. I love the way that he's dropping a stable as he's going up to feudal age, so by the time he gets up, he can start making the horseman immediately, or he can start with the feudal age upgrade. Of course, this is going to be just a pure response to the archer play of the opponent, but this is something that Beast is going to have to address. He's going for a gold mine in the middle. Now, there is some risk associated with that one, because, of course, if you go for a gold mine in the middle area, it's going to be much more difficult to protect. But if you got some defensive towers, it might work. This is something that Marine Lord has done against Lidakor. That was a different map generation, so it definitely wasn't the matchup I was referring to at the beginning of the game when I said that I have seen this map before, I think. But Lidakor versus Marine Lord had a somewhat similar matchup. Lidakor went for a tower rush, and Marine Lord moved to the middle towards that gold mine. In the end, Lidakor won that game, but that was a crazy, crazy game. And I think one of the things that Beastie will have to appreciate as the first night comes out, this is not something that Lidakor was expecting. And look at that. Lidakor is going to pull away the villagers, and Beastie's focusing a full HP villager before he's retargeting it to the low HP vill. That was a clever thing to do, because he knew very well that he can finish off that last villager at 1 HP before it gets back to the TC, but the best thing that he can do after is damage the other one, potentially allowing him to kill 2. So he kills 2 villagers on the right side at Lidakor's base, and what I wanted to say is that Lidakor was very aggressive in the set versus Marine Lord at contesting the middle and dropping towers, secure the central control, and then force the French player to push that. So this is something that Beastie has seen, and I would expect him to be also much more aggressive, making sure that the Mongol player cannot control the middle. Looks like Beastie is mining stone, so there's a chance for a second town center, but what's more intriguing is that his food bank is growing, so Castle Age is not impossible for him either. He's got some knights, which allows him to get some raiding damage going, and it's also something that will deal quite well with the horsemen of the opponent for the time being. Beastie is banking up a ton of food. He's got a reasonable amount of gold to work with as the knight once again swoops in, trying to find some gold miners. The problem here for Lenok is that he's getting harassed left and right, and of course French having the more villagers thanks to the fact that they train them faster is also something that helps Beastie just maintain a villager lead. He's also grabbing Wheelbarrow, as you see at the top of the screen. No eco upgrades just now for Lenok. Lenok's got the pastures working, that's buffed by the Ovu, so that's going to help quite a bit when it comes to the food eco. And now Beastie, it looks like he's going to cancel his plans from going into Castle Age. Instead, he's just going to start adding some more Feudal Age army. He's realizing that he's in danger of being overrun by Spears and Horsemen, which is a unit composition that the French will struggle to stop when they only have Archers and Knights. New tower coming up in the middle. You gotta finish that tower though. You should maybe commit a couple more villagers to that just to make sure it finishes. Beastie's also mining a bit of a stone, but he isn't making a lumber camp, so that is possible. Yeah, he's just mining 50 stone. He doesn't want the second TC, he just wants arrow slits on a tower. If he mined more stone and he plays the mining camp, it would be second TC, but mining 50 stone only and not dropping a mining camp is a sign that he's just going to play with one arrow slits emplacement, probably on the tower in the middle. One of the awkward things about this map I'm just now noticing is that there is a massive split in the resources in the middle. The northern part of this central hill has all the stone, and the southern part has all the gold. That's a very weird duality over here. Now, is this benefiting anyone? I don't think so, because if you look at the vertical split, it's still rather fair between the two players, but it's definitely an awkward generation in many ways. Here come the Horsemen and the Spearmen, of course. They're probably looking for a couple of proxy buildings to burn down, talk about mills, talk about some outlying houses, get some raiding bounty for themselves. Beastie definitely wants to go into Castle Age here, once again banking up resources for that. And now he might be forced away from his hunt, actually. Villagers on the berries will have to retreat, and now villagers on the hunt will have to flee. Beastie doesn't have a spectacular army right now, it's only 11. 3 knights, 6 archers, not something that can hold off 17 army from the Mongols. 9 spears, 7 horsemen. And oh, archers also getting caught off guard here a little bit by the horsemen. Villagers will garrison into the tower though, and you gotta wonder if this is an overextension here by Lenok. 2 towers, one of them having arrow slits and fully garrisoned. That's going to be 2 horsemen taken down. The mill is being set on fire, and that's not something that the Beastie can avoid at this point. Once again, the horsemen getting picked off by the tower fire, and Lenok is just going to abandon that mill. Say, okay, I'm fine with this. I set it on fire, let's look for new targets, and that is going to be the berries this time around. And Beastie, while he's rather close to Castle Age, he can't just yet get up because he's lacking food to do that. Looks like the spears and the horsemen are swinging south. Those are the lumberjacks that could be hit. Beastie finds himself a boar to take, and that's actually very lucky for him because he moved lumberjacks to do that. Beforehand, he had like 8 or 9 villagers on that wood line, so he could have lost a lot more in this aggression. Now there's a horseman coming out as well. Numbers are steadily growing for Beastie, and it looks like he's gonna be able to repel this attack. But one thing that this gave for Lenok is time to get up to Castle Age himself, because if you look at the resources of Lenok, he's actually doing better than his opponent. Lenok is gonna get a Castle Age timing slightly better than the French player here. Still, that boar being available for Beastie is very nice. And let's not forget, Lenok lost most of his army here in these battles. So he lost all the horsemen, lost all the spears. He was able to burn down a couple of buildings, which compensates a tiny bit, of course, because he was able to get some bounty for them. As the guild hall is now coming in for Beastie. Other side likely step it up, as this is going to be a key movement. Lenok finds that boar. Lenok now knows that his opponent is on that boar. Some of the villagers are unable to access the boar as the Khan gets picked off. But Lenok now knows that that boar could be an exposed source of food for the opponent, and that is definitely raidable. Looks like Lenok is not going into Castle Age just yet. He just now started building a step redoubt, so he was lacking a bit of a gold here for this one. He's rushing that up with what seems to be 10 plus villagers. But of course, he could have gotten that up a little faster if he had a slightly more balanced eco with the gold. He probably wasn't paying attention to that. He was microing his army. As now, he's on the way to Castle. Beastie, he's getting up to Castle as you see some horsemen being sent to the south. It's all about raiding that boar, and Beastie should know that his opponent knows about that boar out there. Beastie's going for stone. He knows very well that it's all about getting a castle up in the middle, because from that point on the Mongols will have a tough time. And now the cavalry comes in for the raid. There are some spearmen to fight this one, but It is 2 knights, 1 horseman, and the scout, and that is going to be enough to push away the spears. New spearmen are being made to try and fight this, but right now the gold miners are getting pushed back into the town center, and we have seen this recipe being used over and over again with the French. Come in for a raid, force the opponent to defend, and then just use that window to get a castle up in the middle. A villager gets taken down once again. Now it's a 5 villagers lead. But on the south, you also see a horseman finding those boar villagers, and they are actually being pushed back into the base of Beastie. I think he lost 1 or 2 villagers, but luckily for him, he didn't lose most of them, so he still got away quite healthy from that engagement. He's going to have trouble accessing food though, because as you see, he's out of berries. His hunt still takeable technically, but it's also something that the opponent can raid. And of course the board at the south could also be raided here. Double Lancers and double Spearmen coming out right now by Lidakor, whereas in the middle, Beastie's at 225 stone, which means that in 2 minutes time he's going to have a castle in the middle. If he can get that castle up, Lidakor is going to be in a very difficult position. But Lidakor is going to have that advantage of being able to get quite a lot of knights and spearmen out. And if you look at Lidakor's stone count, 410, he could really use that for double training knights. That's going to be quite a lot of knights coming out with double training. He hasn't used up his stone beforehand, so because of that, it's going to be rather easy for him to afford a large number of knights. Beast is going to start walling off the south once again. Very much defensive gameplay from him. We have seen this over and over again by Beastie. Wall after wall, layer after layer, making sure the opponent cannot raid him. And this is one of the things that makes him very dangerous. It's difficult to raid him, as now his own raid comes into the gold mine of Lidakor. Spearmen will try to fight off the knights, now with the veteran upgrade for both the spears and the knights. But the knights are able to get 1 or 2 villager kills here once again, and they disengage. This is the problem here for Lidakor. He's getting picked apart by knights, and Beastie is using this window to gather the stone from the middle, and he's ready to drop a castle in a second. He's probably going to have some knights swinging in from the south as well, and this is why the French are just so dangerous. 2-pronged attack with those knights, you keep raiding and raiding, the Mongol player has to react to that because the Mongol player can't wall himself, and now you could get a castle up in the middle. There is enough stone for Beastie, he's coming for it, he doesn't have the numbers just yet to make it happen, so what he's gonna have to do is either place it a little bit more to the back, or alternatively, he just has to distract the opponent, and that's exactly what he's doing. Lidakor didn't realize the importance of that stone mine in the middle. He saw the mining camp, he saw the villagers, but he didn't seem to realize that this is going to turn into a castle for the opponent. Some arbaletier hitting the field against all those knights that are coming out for Lidakor, and that castle in the middle is being made right now. Lidakor also spotted the monk, he also killed it, so he should know that the opponent is going for that sacred site in the middle. And now this is the moment where the Mongols will have a tougher and tougher time. Because the Mongols usually dominate this matchup early game, but once you get to this position where the French can continuously raid you... Oh, what is this? What is this angle? It looks scenic, sure thing, but I'm not exactly sure why we're looking at this battlefield from this angle. But anyways, the key thing here is that from this point on, the French can start raiding the opponent, and they have a castle in the middle, and the Mongols can't wall themselves up, which means that they can't prevent those raids from happening. Wave after wave of cavalry will flood into the eco of Mongols, and the Mongol player basically has to choose. Do I contest the middle and try to decap the sacred site, or do I protect my eco? And you basically have to choose one of the two. You see, the knights are coming back and forth here, trying to stop that monk from capturing the sacred site. Monk now over there. We got a counterattack coming in here for Lidakor. That's a great counterattack. Lumberjacks of Beastie will have to flee for their lives. And I think Beastie didn't realize that there is an opening here. Between those forests, there is an opening. And this is something that's going to hurt Beastie because those knights were able to get in. Something that he did not expect. Looks like he's going to be able to clean this up, but this is going to force him to divert some of his attention over there. And if I'm not mistaken, now we got some knights moving in on those boar villagers as well. Lidakor is finding those exposed resources, but there is the retaliation coming in by Beastie. He's coming on those gold miners, not a single spearman back at home. And I think that Beastie is willing to sacrifice some of those knights for the sake of killing a couple more vills here. Still a 12 villagers lead right now for Beastie. Sacred site in the middle is still neutral. It looks like the diversion here from Lidakor allowed him to take down the priest in the middle. Arbaletier now on the battlefield. Looks like the Lancers of Lidakor are getting picked apart by those. Sacred site once again being kept. You have a new group of units coming in from the left side. So once again, led by the Khan, that seems to be 2 Lancers that loop around and are trying to hit the Lumberjacks of Beastie. If Beastie gets those walls up, which just happened, you can see it on the minimap. he's going to be fine against those raids. And suddenly we're entering the stage where the French player is going to be fine against the raids simply because he's got walls and the Mongol player doesn't. And if you look at this trench warfare once again by Beastie, wall after wall after wall, every single part of the map is pretty much walled off by Beastie over here, if you see. The first Beastie game I ever casted, by the way, was, I think, a Hillandale versus Viper. And at that time, I had no idea who Beastie was. And I think my title for that video was something like Trench Warfare or so. Because I was so impressed about how Beastie was playing this game. He's really the only player that's going for so many walls. But it's becoming very effective for him because, as I said, it's difficult for Lidakor to raid him. And the moment that Beastie cleans this up, which is just going to be a matter of seconds here, picks off the last Spearman, the moment he cleans this up, he's going to have the window to start sending in knight after knight into the opponent's eco, and he's going to use that as a diversion to try and cap the sacred site in the middle. Now, Lidakor was able to get some towers up, which buys him some time, because at this point, Beastie isn't able to get that sacred site captured, at least for the time being. Once again, knights are launching a counterattack, and this is going to be coupled with what seems to be another castle for Beastie. You see, he's got the stone in the bank for this, and usually this is how you do it. Send in the knights, force the opponent to defend, and use that window to drop a castle. Now, that did not happen, and it looks like Beastie tried to cap the sacred site once again. Springald towers will wipe out his priest, so he's going to need some siege or something to take down those towers. Siege workshop now coming out for Lidakor, and he's grabbing some Springolds. I feel like Lidakor, at least for now, is holding off the opponent from that middle, and that's a key thing. Being able to prevent the opponent from capturing that sacred site is definitely one way to try and compensate for the fact that your opponent has a castle in the middle. The towers inside Beastie's base are still active, and I'm starting to wonder how much gold Beastie has left to work with. Here comes another night raid, and that's going to be quite a lot of villagers killed here. Lidakor just now realizing that the raid is coming in. That's 5 villagers, 6 villagers going down here. Even with the Springald tower out there, Beastie's gonna be able to get a good raid going. There is retaliation coming in by Lidakor, though. He's burning his way through those palisades. Beastie getting another castle up in the middle on the northern side, and he can afford a third one very soon. Arbalestry and knights are being sent to the south here to deal with that aggression. As this castle is going to be great for Beastie because it's going to start taking down some of those towers. Villagers being pulled to repair this one. Arbalestry picking off one of those lancers. And now as you see, one of those towers is under fire. I think there's a traction trebuchet for Lidakor, and indeed he's starting to shell that castle. But there is repair villagers nearby, and I saw trebuchet coming in for Beastie as well. The problem for Lidakor still remains the fact that his base is wide open, and that means it's raidable. And as long as it's raidable, Beastie will always have the option to just ignore the middle and just send the army into the base of the enemy, and with that, wipe out the entire army of Lidakor. Lidakor once again with some aggression on the left side this time around, as you could see for a brief moment, Beastie is building a second town center, which means that he wants to start grabbing an even larger villager lead. He probably knows that he has the villager lead, but he wants to make sure that he has like a 100 to 70 villagers lead in the next couple of minutes. Looks like the Spearman will be able to break in on the left side. Some forces are adjusting to that location as the castle in the middle is being shelled. Beastie was able to take down some of the towers. There is only one that remains, but that's the tower that's responsible for killing all of those prelates in the middle. Stone walls now coming in for Beastie though, and that's going to make it impossible for Lidakor to just burn through that, and the new wave of knights is being sent in towards the gold miners of Lidakor. That's the problem that Lidakor is facing. As he's focusing on the middle, his forces are being ground down, and with the eco once again being exposed to the knights, it's time to strike for Beastie, and he can use this window once again, where Lidakor wants to launch a counterattack. Stone walls are coming up, the arbalestry are over there. You might even be able to finish the stone walls. Oh, this is gonna be close. This is gonna be close. The villager is trying to go for the stone walls, trying to get the foundations going. Looks like the lancers will be able to engage this. There's still an opening though, and the arbalestry can just start picking them apart. And at this point, Lidakor obviously doesn't want to commit against this one. Lidakor is using that con to great efficiency, killing villagers left and right from Beastie, but there is the raid inside the base of Lidakor. All the attack notifications going off everywhere, all across the map. But the big thing is that raid, Lidakor's villager count is plummeting. It's at 43 right now, and indeed, it's getting worse. It's getting worse every second. Down to 40 villagers. He's running back to the town center with those lumberjacks. Spearmen are chasing, but Beastie has reached the point where he can sacrifice those knights for the sake of completely annihilating the opponent's economy. And that's exactly what we're seeing over here. So many villagers being taken down here, and then Beastie is just going to disengage and say, okay, I'll come back later. 37 villagers left for Lidakor as opposed to 66 of Beastie. Beastie did lose one castle in the middle, but he still has a foothold, and now he has the chance to capture the sacred sites. I think at this pace, we're marching closer and closer to a second game victory for Beastie. Not because he has the middle, it's because he has the ability to raid the opponent, and he's grinding down the eco of Lidakor here big time. Oh, look at that move from Beastie. He realized that there is 3 trebuchets over there that could be picked off. He's sending in knights from the other side. There are some spearmen to fight against, so he's just going to disengage with the knights, at least for the time being. A big horde is coming in from Lidakor. He's got a lot of spears, he's got a lot of lancers here. Trebuchets are also setting up here. Beastie is just trying to delay this one as much as possible, trying to burn down the blacksmith. Bit of a mismicro there by Beastie, if I may say so, losing a couple of those lancers to the trebuchet fire and, of course, the spearmen. Army numbers are not necessarily spectacular for Beast, it's only 45 versus 58, but he can replenish that army much easier than his opponent can, and I would think that soon we're going to have that monk capturing the sacred site in the middle, and with that starting the countdown. Beastie behind this one also collected 3 relics, so not only does he have a 27 villagers lead, that's definitely not 27, my math is just terrible. It's actually way more than that, 35. 35 villagers lead right now for Beastie, and of course 3 relics. That's a juggernaut economy for him. His food eco isn't spectacular, we have to add that. It's only 600 per minute, which is not impressive at all. On the other hand, he's able to start capping the sacred site, and we also have to mention something else. There is no sustainable gold source right now for Lidakor. The spearmen do break in on the southern part, so we'll talk about gold later, as the spearmen could actually pose a large threat here. I wonder if Lidakor is going for the landmarks, because at this point, that's the only thing that he could potentially do. What else can he do with those spears? Spearmen splitting up, however, the sacred site in the middle is still being captured, and with that, the countdown begins. The arbaletier and the archers are back, though, so the spearmen will have to disengage. Lidakor wasn't able to accomplish anything with those spears, and the moment he relieves the pressure from the opponent's base, Beastie is gonna be able to send in the knights once again, swoop in from the north or the south, and then just hit those gold miners. Lidakor doesn't really have the eco to mass a large enough army to push the opponent from that middle defensive position. We could see a big clash over here on the battlefield. Not a ton of archers over here. This is not a great matchup for Beastie. He's got arbaletier and knights. Neither of those work really well against the spearmen. You need some archers into this army to be able to fight with them. But you see, he's pulling some more villagers. And since Lidakor is retreating, might as well get some stone walls going. That's exactly what he's doing. And with the stone walls out there, the opponent would have no chance of counterattacking without any heavy siege. And you see that the knights will just completely ignore those spearmen and head straight to the opponent's base once again. Trebuchet is ready to push here on the north for Lidakor, but Beastie says, okay, you can push the middle, you can even decap it, because I will just destroy your eco and win the game like that. That's the duality here with the French once you have the middle. You don't necessarily have to hold the middle as long as you're able to raid the opponent. And part of the reason why the Mongols are in great danger on this map once we get to like Castle Age or Imperial Age, is because they cannot wall up, and this makes them very vulnerable to raid after raid. Spearmen are getting back home, so these knights won't be able to accomplish that much, but this once again delays Lidakor quite a bit as he's making a run for it with the villagers. At least he's got the Yam network affecting the villagers, so they move faster. But with the walls up, you're going to have no chance of Lidakor counterattacking on the sides. The only place where he can fight is going to be in the middle, and if Beastie's food eco was just a tiny bit better, I think that Lidakor would have no chance. With Beastie's food eco not being so spectacular and his population also not being super duper impressive, there is still a chance for him for Lidakor. Quite a lot of trebuchets out here. This is something that Beastie is going to see. The Ovu was being shelled, so the Ovu is about to be taken down by the trebuchets of Beastie. Indeed, there goes the Ovu. Looks like all of the knights here from Beastie are getting cleaned up by the spears, though. That's a scary force of spearmen. And the question becomes whether Beastie has some mangonels. He's got 3 mangonels, though. 3 mangonels, and on the other side, Lidakor only has 1 springald. Beastie's setting up a trap, I think. I think Beastie knows that there is so many spears that he won't be able to hold that without archers. He's setting up a trap with mangonels. Looks like we had a bit of a lag spike over there. Siege Workshop also being shelled by trebuchets for the time being. It is going to be a retreat from Lenok. Knights once again being sent in, once again met with spearmen, so these raids are getting less and less effective for Beastie. But of course, he has 98 villagers over 51, and the Sacred Site countdown is right now at 7 minutes. Now we have to keep in mind that the Sacred Site was a big factor in the Marine Lord versus Lenok game on this map, and it went down the wire. It went down to like 20 seconds time, so Lenok isn't going to be too stressed about this one. Trebuchets will fire back at the weapons of Beastie for the time being. First tower is going to get taken down. New castle being built though here by Beastie. That could be immediately taken down by those trebuchets though, so he has to be careful. He has to be very careful. He needs to cancel that castle. Oh no, the gold miners! The gold miners were a disaster. The castle in the middle will be taken down. That's not even a question. Mangonels setting up. Trebuchet setting up. Mangonels also out here for Beastie though. That's a lot of firepower out here for him. Springolds, Mangonel Fire, and Arbaletrier. But behind this one, Lenok did not see that his eco is getting killed. Mangonels unleashing death and destruction on all of those spears. It's all about that spearman charge for Lenok. He knows that this is his last hurrah. His eco is gone. He's pushing the first castle out here. It's on fire. Spearman numbers getting decimated by the Mangonel Fire though. The castle fire. New volleys are coming out one after another. Still 2 Mangonels remain, 3 Mangonels remain. Now it's only 2 for Beastie. A new Mangonel is gonna get taken down, but most of the spearmen are also getting killed by the town center fire here. Too much. Too much for Lenok to deal with. Springolds are now taking down his own siege weapons, and with that, Lenok has no eco left behind this one. His army has been decimated. The Springold fire is taking down all the trebuchets, and the castle fire just wiping out most of those spears. Mangonel fire helping quite a bit. Mangonels weren't super effective in this battle, but they were enough to damage the spearmen and allow the castles to finish them off. Lenok did not see those villagers getting killed back at home. He knew that he had to push this one, but that didn't work out. He had the best unit composition that he could go for. Against Knights and Arbaletrier, indeed, you have to go for Spearmen. The problem is that without escort, without something that takes down the Mangonels, it's not going to be enough. And in multiple cases in this tournament, we have seen that in a Mongol versus French matchup, the window closes for the Mongols when the French player gets a castle up in the middle. We have seen an instance of that once again. The French player is able to constantly raid the Mongol player, and that pins the Mongols inside their base, and those castles are just very difficult to push in Castle Age, and you basically have no hope of getting up to Imperial. And with that, Lenok is going to lose game number 2 over here as well in this best of 9. 2-0 for Beastie, and looks like he is playing a lot more confident than Lenok in these first 2 games. We'll have to see what Lenok has to bring us in game number 3. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 3 in between Beastie QT and Lenok. An appearance of a civilization long forgotten, a civilization that we haven't seen in the entire tournament pretty much. In the qualifiers it was extensively used, maybe even day number 1 and day number 2, but holy potatoes was it a long time since we've seen Delhi Sultan being used. On the left side is going to be Beastie QT playing as the English in blue, and on the right side we will have Lenok playing as the Delhi in red. We really have a minimal amount of Delhi being utilized in the entire tournament, so I'm curious to see how this exactly is going to go. Playing Altai, a traditional English map, and a map where Delhi is good, but it's not necessarily the best Delhi map out there. So Delhi is generally a strong civilization everywhere, but you gotta ask the question why exactly Lenok is thinking about using Delhi on this specific map. Now, of course, the Delhi Sultanate does have its advantages, and one of the things that Lenok can think about is using one spearman to wall off this side, one spearman to wall off this side, and then concentrate all his efforts on that central sacred side, and basically just make this a game where he's rushing up those sacred sites, forcing the English to make a move. Now, this is not an easy matchup for the English, but it's also not a terrible matchup over here, so this is a rather even setup, and the question becomes how Lenok is going to be able to contest map control. Because of course the English here can go for longbow's towers, and if the Delhi is pinned inside his own base, it's very difficult to get those sacred sites. Looking at Altai as a map, we do have some statistics for the players over here. So for Lenok, he has played this map a total of 5 times, won 3 times, lost 2 twice. So 60% win rate for Altai. for Lenok at least. Beastie, he also played this 5 times. He's got an 80% win rate, so he won 4 out of 5. Slightly better win rate out here. The more curious thing here for us is going to be the Delhi Sultanate. Lenok has played just once with the Delhi Sultanate in the entire tournament, and he has a win with that. Whereas on the other side with English, this is where it gets interesting for Beastie. Beastie has picked English 3 times in the tournament, main event, and he lost all 3 times. So Beastie currently has no English wins out there. And I'm wondering what exactly he has on his mind against the Delhi in this one, because this is not a Civilization matchup that we have seen a lot, so there could be a lot of unexplored options here. And especially given the fact that Delhi is generally so powerful, this could be a tricky one for Beast to win. You could see for a brief moment that Lenok was also very successful finding sheep, so there's going to be a lot of backup food as well to work with, even if he's denied from the berries. Beast is on the way to Feudal Age with the Council Hall, whereas on the other side, I would expect Dome of Faith to be dropped. Although, maybe... No Tower of Victory. Like, that would be the craziest thing to think about, you know. One can hope, I can always hope that I see the Tower of Victory being utilized, but it's gonna be the Dome of Faith no matter what. One thing I want to highlight is that the food source, the hunt, is at the front here for Beastie, and that could be concerning for him. Of course, he's English, so even if he that cuts off, he can still access the farms. But ultimately, the problem for him will be that the wood lines are also somewhat exposed, backup gold mines are somewhat exposed, so tons of resources that are technically available for Beastie could be denied very easily if the opponent finds a way to overrun him with numbers. Now, Delhi here will open stable straight away because you know that the longbows are coming, so you want to go for efficient production, stable horsemen. And because of that, Beast is going to have to react to that with the barracks straight away. Here comes the stable for Lenok, and we are probably going to see a scholar jumping into that as well with efficient production finishing very soon. Sanctity is queued up after it, so the plan is clear here. Get map control for Lenok, and then use that to capture sacred sites. One thing that would be very cheeky for Beastie is to try and wall in some sacred sites. He did not do that so far, and I don't think that he will, but that could have been an option. Especially on the right side, because this is definitely something that Beastie can wall off here. His opponent probably wouldn't have been able to contest it, and then even just denying one sacred site from Delhi is at least a bit of an advantage, making sure that you only have to focus on the other two. Longbow spears coming in here, and now once we have these unit compositions, which seems to be archer and horseman, as compared to what will be longbow and spearman, this comes down to patience and evaluating whether or not you can take a fight. Because this is one of those matchups where one bad fight could lose you the entire game. This is applicable for both players. So you really have to be considerate of what the numbers are for the opponent and what your forces are. And for that, you need some good scouting. Now, Lenok is going to see the Fort of the Villager over here. And I think this is a wall coming in on the right side. So in the end, Beast is going to wall that in. And if he drops a middle tower as well, he could have a very nice forward position guarding that central sacred site. And keep in mind that the Delhi is powerful for 2 reasons. Sacred Site, actually 3 reasons. Sacred Sites, parries, efficient production. That's the deadly trio of the Delhi. Now, efficient production is finished, so you can start buffing up your production on the stable, the archer range. Berry-wise, we do have an exposed berry patch over here and a nice backup here. So there is still quite a lot of berries to work with for Lenok. And now, last but not least, of course, Sacred Sites. It looks like Beast is getting a villager up there as well. If he can successfully ward this side off, that's going to make things very complicated. Because Lenok won't be able to capture the sacred sites on the side, and it looks like Beastie is walling it off from both directions. He wants to make sure that Lenok can't even come in from this side. He's going to wall in the entire sacred site. He's not even going to wall off the side. He's just going to wall in the sacred site, and then focus all his efforts in the middle with the tower. That's a clever way of playing this. So, from the equation of the Delhi, where you have the efficient production, where you have the sacred sites, and where you have the berries, you will soon have to remove that sacred site component because Lenok won't be able to push this. And the thing is that the English don't have a great mobility here. They might not even be able to take a straight-up fight against the forces of the Delhi player here. But the reality is that with that tower in the middle, Beastie doesn't even have to take a fight. That's not a fight that Lenok can take right now close to that tower. And one thing I would love to see from Beastie is potentially getting arrow slits or fortifications on that tower. It looks like he's tempted to push a little deeper here, trying to just sort of force Lenok to defend and make sure that he can finish the walls in time, because by sort of probing and pushing the opponent's base, you could get yourself a window to finish those walls guaranteed. Numbers steadily being built by Lenok. Keep in mind that he also has, of course, the blacksmith upgrades for free. So he's grabbing multiple blacksmith upgrades, actually. So he's going to have those upgrades up very soon. And now, the Scholar is being sent over to the Sacred side. Lenok just wanted to go in here, but instead the Scholar will just walk all the way out there. Looks like the Fort Villager is going to get intercepted by the Horseman here. So this lady is not going to live to see another day, or is she? A couple of Longbows and Spearmen are coming in to help out here. And Beastie is going to have to start thinking about defending those Hunters, because those Hunters are dangerously exposed. Here come the Horsemen, and Lidok's counterattack could give a very nice window for him to try and contest the central area. Once again, Scholar sent over to try and cap the Sacred sites. But as things stand, that's not really going to work out in the long run. Look, Horseman now helping out that Scholar in the north. You see, this is where Lenok is realizing that he's going to have to save that Scholar first, of course, because the wolves are eating that Scholar right now. But more importantly, that the only way for him to capture that Sacred site is going through this entire area here. And that's going to take quite a lot of walking time for him, and it's going to make it much more difficult to hold. In the meantime, looks like Beastie's forces are back at home. There are a couple of horsemen being sent to the left side, so they will try to burn down that wall. But the key thing here for Beastie is that he's keeping his opponent off from the Sacred sites, at least for the time being. Now, clock is still ticking, because at some point, Lenok is going to start capping those Sacred sites. Looks like the Scholar was killed by the wolves here, so the horseman couldn't save him. And now, I think the best thing that Beastie could do is go straight into the base of the opponent. Because at this point, all the cavalry is on the left and the right, but if he starts marching in, what exactly would Lenok do against that? Bunch of spearmen, bunch of longbows marching into the base of the opponent, that would be devastating for Lenok. He could lose a bunch of lumberjacks or berryvilles. Speaking of berries, he's depleting his first batch of berries back at home. As the cavalry is now coming back from behind, only 3 horsemen, and I think that this is something that Beastie sees, and he has some spearmen back at home to deal with this. The other group of horsemen are trying to burn down the walls on the right side, and with that, open up the possibility of reinforcing that Sacred site a little easier. Army numbers looking better for Lenok. The problem here for Beastie is that he's holding, but he's not pushing his opponent, and he's not working towards Castle Age. Now here comes the push, and if those archers sneak around and hit the back of that wood line, that could be devastating. Lenok is now moving in with his cavalry. He's hitting the gold miners as we speak. That's going to be the first villager casualty, I think, from Beastie. Or is that going to be? Yep, that's one villager taken down. A second one is going to get taken down. No spearmen back at home to deal with those horsemen just yet. But that's the push coming from the south. Those forces creeping up on the wood line of Lenok. And I don't know if Lenok is expecting that. He definitely sees it now as the longbows open up against those lumberjacks. And even the food villagers. Even a tower is being placed, and now the berries are being denied. Suddenly things are going to be really difficult for Lenok here, because the longbows are here, and I think that Beastie is intentionally hiding the spearmen back, because he wants to make sure that Lenok is going to charge this with cavalry. He's intentionally not showing the spears, because he wants his opponent to charge with the cavalry here. Longbows once again picking off villagers. So many went down already here from Lenok. He's down to 33. A tower is up as well to boost that army, and as you see, now the cavalry comes in, and the spearmen join the fun. This is exactly what Beastie wanted. He wanted to make sure that he's able to bait in those horsemen into that fight. Now, this is a great fight here for Lenok nonetheless. He's got crazy numbers. Archers, horsemen taking this fight, spearmen taking a decent hits against those horsemen, but the archers will just focus down all the spears from Beastie, and this is the danger of the Delhi. Being overrun by those numbers is just very scary. Beastie's taking the best fight he can. He's focusing down the archers, tower fire helping immensely as well. But now, all the spearmen are gone, and Beastie's forces are getting cleaned up. And this is my main problem here. It's my main problem with the Delhi, the fact that they're just able to overrun you with units. It's really like Zerg in StarCraft. The thing is that you look at the Delhi, they have a powerful economy with the berries. They can also work out the gold income with the sacred sites. And then with efficient production, they can utilize that to flood units. Let's compare that, for example, to the Holy Roman Empire. HRE is a civilization with a great eco in feudal age, with the Aachen Chapel, right? But can they overrun you with units? Not so much, because they don't have a unit that's just going to buff up the production of their stables, their archer ranges to a great levels. So this is the problem here for Delhi, and that's the reason why it's by far the most banned civilization in the tournament. More banned than the Mongols. It's because the Delhi have that combination of extremely powerful economy and great military production, and this just allows them to overrun the map with units and use that map control to secure sacred sites, and now Beast is in trouble. I don't want to sound grim, but I don't think that he's got a shot at this game. Villager counts are dead even, but his army numbers are at 18 versus 40. There's battering rams coming in, there's horsemen coming in. Those horsemen already have the range defense upgrade, and the new upgrades from the blacksmith are just now coming in. And the thing is that Lidakor doesn't even have to push this because he's got the resources for Castle Age. I really hate to say that the civilization is broken, but Delhi borderline is broken. And as I said, I'm really not the guy that likes to say, oh yeah, this is broken, because, you know, sometimes when you say something is broken, it might feel like you're just complaining because you lost to that strategy. But boy oh boy is Delhi powerful. As I'm spectating this, you can even see why. Basically double, triple the army that Beastie has, and still able to get to Castle Age so much faster. It's 1,000 foot per minute we are talking about. Longbow's trying to pick off the Scholar in the middle. Castle Age will be coming in here for Lidakor. And Beastie losing all his forces here. The Scholar will be able to cap the sacred site. No shot for Beastie here. What is he gonna do? It's 2-1 in terms of army numbers, and his opponent is about to get to Castle Age, and with that, he's going to have access to Lancers, he's going to have access to Men-at-Arms, he can even flood them out because he's got efficient production, of course, for him. Lidakor is in a great position, and this is a must-win game for him. Because he's down 2 games, he really doesn't want to fall down 3-0 here, and so far he's in a great position because the English player, Beastie, has almost no shot at stopping this army. The archers are concealed in the stealth forest, and there is the Castle Age coming in. I feel like when Beastie sees that his opponent is in Castle Age, he's probably going to tap out, because right now he's trying to just build up an army, hold this off, hoping that his opponent is not going to castle, but reality is that Beastie might not even be able to hold this one in Feudal Age, let alone Castle Age. Here comes the cavalry. The longbows will retreat as much as possible. All the food eco here for Beastie was evacuated. Numbers are still looking way better for Lidakor. Archers will trade volleys against each other, but of course, lumberjacks getting forced back, villagers from the forest getting forced back, and of course, horsemen now diving in, getting a couple of villager kills. Archer numbers are dropping here for Lidakor. That's the only positive thing that we can say about Beastie's position, though. Looks like he will be able to repel this attack for the time being. But with his opponent getting closer and closer to Castle Age, having a larger and larger chance for Men-at-Arms or Lancers, this is going to be next to impossible for Beastie to hold. Rams are also being taken down, archers still trading volleys against each other. Horsemen, nice control by Lidakor, he's making sure that those are not getting hit by the spears at all, while also being on the battlefield, absorbing arrow fire. 2 sacred sites now under the control of Lidakor, and as I said, the big question mark becomes, how is Beastie going to get to Castle Age? If Beastie gets to Castle, I think he's got a shot. Because the most difficult part to defend against the Delhi is this part. This Feudal Age unit flood, coupled with a fast Castle Age, and then suddenly you are looking at Men-at-Arms and Lancers overrunning you when you are still stuck in Feudal. Now, one thing that Beastie in theory could do is wall up and slow this down, but I really don't know what he could do here. Yesterday, when he played his set versus Vortex, he really was resilient and he really didn't want to give up on any game. He was fighting it out until the bitter end. But I have no idea how he's going to win this game, if he has any chance. I don't think he has. He's got a good farming eco, that's a positive. If he has multiple layers of walls, let's say, and he's playing very defensive, leveraging that English farming eco, he might have a shot. In about a minute, he would have enough food for Castle Age, but he needs to get to Castle. That's number 1. If he doesn't get to Castle Age, he's going to get overrun by Castle Age units here with no answer to him. Looks like the Sacred Site in the middle was decapped. On the north, Sacred Site is also getting decapped, but now Lidakor has his eyes set elsewhere. It is going to be... Now the relic's being picked up. He already has 1 relic coming in. I think there was a second one coming in, but probably the Scholar was intercepted somewhere. Longbow's now opening up on those villagers. That's actually a nice pickup for Beastie. The problem that Beastie is going to face is that his resources, as I said, are very open. So, even if he walls up and plays defensive, protecting those resources will be a difficulty. He's going to pick off the Scholar though, and now he's pushing back the forces of the opponent. Getting a couple of villager kills over here would definitely help, because at this point he just needs to slow down this game, sort of buy himself some time. It's all about that. But now that's men-at-arms, and I think that's an overextension right now from Beastie. He tried to push this one, but he's getting forced all the way back, but he has a chance at Castle Age. Now, needless to say is the fact that now, this game becomes a must-win for Lidakor. He was in such a great position. It's 2-0 for the opponent, and he's got a very powerful civilization in his hands. He really can't afford to lose this game here. I think if Lidakor loses this game, he's gonna be in a very serious trouble. Castle Age being rushed up by 20 plus villagers here. Look at that, that's 20 plus that Beastie is using. And the positive thing that we can say about his position is that he's gonna have 2 town centers, so he can start building up a villager lead. Relic-wise, the opponent is gonna have all the relics, but by getting to Castle Age, Beastie also gets something else for himself. The ability to make stone walls. Because by tournament rules, you can only make stone walls in Castle Age. So now that we are in Castle, is that a forward castle or it's a defensive castle? I think it's a forward castle by Lidakor. He isn't messing around. He wants to push that dagger even deeper. He knows very well, as he himself has a second town center, that he doesn't want to give a window for Beastie to recover here. Now with Castle Age in for Beastie, if he has an archer range, he can start popping out some crossbows himself to try and slow this down. Looks like he doesn't have an archer range for that, so he's just gonna have to make his own men-at-arms and then support them with the longbows. Really, 1 or 2 crossbows would help wonders here. Longbows with network of castles still being very effective cleaning up the men-at-arms, but this gives a buffer for Lidakor to drop that castle, and he's also placing a mining camp on the stone, which is a sign that he's not done dropping castles yet. Beastie is still struggling to clean up those men-at-arms inside his eco. He's gonna get forced all the way back here. He has to abandon a bunch of farms because that castle will just deny them. And once again, the question becomes, how is Beastie going to win this game? Because he's somehow holding on to this one, sure thing, but what's the next step for him? He's just bumping into that castle, realizing that, oh shoot, I have a castle in my face. He's going to lose 2 longbows over here, potentially to the castle fire. He tried to harass the opponent as much as possible, but I can only see one reasonable thing that could work for Beastie. Pause, I know I said that before, but raids. Because the thing is that one thing that Lidakor did not do is wall off his base at the back. So if Beastie is able to get, per se, 10 knights into the opponent's eco from either direction, he should be able to kill quite a lot of villagers. Now, it won't finish off Lidakor immediately because Lidakor is going to have the relics, Lidakor is going to have the sacred sites. But that could be Beastie's ticket back into this game, somehow getting a raid going and then decimating the villager count of Lidakor. But that's going to be very difficult, especially because Lidakor is getting ready for a second castle, and I don't think that Beastie has the tools to stop that right now. We're talking about 23 longbows with veteran upgrade, as opposed to 7 knights, 1 lancer. The army of Lidakor isn't spectacular, but it's an armored army. So it's going to be difficult for the longbows to take it down. 1 sacred site now in the hands of Lidakor, and he's dropping the second castle right in the face of the opponent, completely suffocating Beastie here. Beastie is getting knights going, and Beastie does not see that castle coming up in his face yet. That's gonna come as a nasty surprise, that's for sure. Now, the longer the game goes, the better this is going to be for Beastie, because keep in mind that Lidakor is going to run out of berries at this point. These berries are almost depleted, there is still a patch of berries over here. But once Lidakor runs out of berries, suddenly the English will have a bit of a time. In that time frame, the Delhi player will have to start adding farms, and that's going to slow down their advance. This is something that Beastie could utilize, because one thing that Beastie has with his farming eco is sustainability. That farming eco is already set up, and you will never have to add more. Looks like farming eco is set up for Lidakor though, so there is really not going to be a big window here for Beastie. I thought Lidakor is living off the berries, but that's not true. Now that Lidakor has farming eco, Beastie's position is very difficult. Simply because his opponent also has the farming eco, so he doesn't have to invest a lot into that farming eco anymore. Here come the knights. I don't think that you should do this with 5 knights. You need more than this, because the moment you do this once, your opponent will basically be told that you're going to do that again, and Lidakor will wall up. The moment Lidakor sees those knights in his eco, he's going to start walling up. So I think you needed a little more than this. You need to do enough damage before your opponent realizes that he's making a mistake by leaving his back open. That's going to be another castle potentially by Lidakor on the hilltop. Oh, he's running out of stone. That's a bit of a problem. He's just 14 stone away from a new castle. Here come the knights. There is a chance here for Beastie. If Lenok makes mistake after mistake, there is still a chance for Beastie, because exactly this is the way for him back into this game, starting to raid left and right. But as I said, now that Beastie has shown his hand, I would expect Lenok to start walling up. So if Lenok walls off these sides, Beastie is once again going to be in a tough position. But this is exactly Beastie's ticket back into this game, because if he starts slaying those villagers left and right, suddenly his opponent's eco could collapse. Villager count being dead even right now. Of course, you have 2 Sacred Sites, 3 relics as well here for Lenok. But it looks like Beastie is able to buy himself quite a lot of time here, thanks to those raids. His knights are being surrounded a tiny bit. But if he has a second wave coming in, that could suddenly turn things around. I see a trebuchet. No, that's not a trebuchet. That's a springald for Beastie, and a trebuchet coming in now to shell that castle. Getting confused on the colors a little bit here. That was a springald for Lenok and a trebuchet for Beastie. Beastie is trying to trap that castle down. New castle being placed as we speak. There is going to be still a springald for Lenok targeting that trap. For now, Beastie is using that Knight Raid as a distraction, but doesn't have the firepower to take down that castle, and he's gonna have to abandon that farming eco. Longbows are now coming in though, and you gotta wonder if that castle is even going up. Are we seeing a bit of a bleeding over here from Lenok? Because you get the feel that now he's bleeding at multiple positions. It's death by 1,000 wounds, really. Knights are coming in from behind, hitting his eco. He's down to 64 villagers. He still has the Sacred Sites, he still has the relics, so no problems for him there, but you gotta be careful, because you're seeing that the confidence is growing here for Beastie. He's able to kill villagers on that castle. Stopping that castle would go a long way for keeping Beastie in this game, and it looks like with longbow volleys coming out, once again the villagers are getting picked apart. Beastie is staying in this game, and as Lenok is focusing on getting that castle up, now the knights are swooping back in, killing villagers left and right. Suddenly Lenok is dropping on the villager department, and sure thing, you're gonna have a ton of gold. But you can't buy food forever. If you lose your food eco, you're going to be in trouble. And you see the castle was cancelled. Knights are once again coming in. As I said, this is pretty much a must-win here for Lenok. His advantage was so big. Beastie never won a game with English in this tournament. He can't afford to lose this one here, because then Beastie's gonna be up 3 games in a best of 9. It would be a terrible, terrible position for Lenok to be in if he starts losing this game. But now, you get the feel that Beastie's gaining confidence, because he's starting to take down those castles with trebuchets. He's starting to raid the opponent's eco. Springald numbers are steadily increasing, and you still have men-at-arms and elephants out there. But once again, the knights are coming in on those villagers, and Lenok's eco is just so exposed. He hasn't walled it off, which means that wave after wave of cavalry can come in and keep killing those villagers. We are seeing something very similar to the previous game develop. One central fight with the knights of Beastie raiding the opponent to oblivion. And ultimately, that was the deal that won the game in a previous game for Beastie. He was able to raid and raid and raid, and then that was just enough distraction to win the middle, and now he's coming in on the stone miners. Villager count for Lenok is dropping really fast. He's down to 41. Relic this, relic that. Sacred side this, sacred side that. He's down to 41 eco. His army is still big, but most of that is trebuchets that might even be unprotected here. Lenok is in serious trouble. He's in serious trouble in game number 3. Lenok now forced back all the way into his base. He still has 65 military population, but now Beastie is just sending in wave after wave of cavalry, and with the momentum shrinking for Lenok, he also lost the sacred site in the middle, or excuse me, at the top. In the middle, he still has it, and he's regrouping his forces around that area. He doesn't want to lose that final sacred site, but now, if you look at the resource incomes per minute, suddenly you see a change in the direction. Better gold income for Beastie, wood income way better, food income way better, and the stone income is comparable. Now, Beastie QT has the better eco. English farming eco kicking in, and you see, now that the berries are inaccessible for the Delhi, suddenly their farming eco is going to be inferior compared to the English, especially if there are knights rampaging it over and over again. Lenok isn't able to go above 45 villagers, and he just keeps losing eco behind this. Beastie might even have this game now. Because now Lenok is starting to wall himself up, but is it coming a little too late? A new wave of knights are coming in on the right side. Lenok is dropping below 40 vills, and this is exactly the window that Beastie wants to utilize. As I said, Once you get through that part where the Delhi can overrun you in Feudal Age, and then get to Castle Age early, I think you're through the worst. And I know I said that Beastie has no shot at this game. It seemed like it. Because he was about to get overrun with Feudal Age units, then he was beaten to Castle Age, his opponent had 2 Sacred Sites. The only thing that Lidakor needs to make sure is that he doesn't die to raids. And it seemed so unlikely that he was gonna lose 40-50 villagers, right? Because we're talking about 40-50 villagers being killed here, and that's exactly what we're witnessing. We're not talking about these raids killing 5 vills. We're talking about these raids killing 20, 30, 40. And that seemed so unlikely, and suddenly we're at 165 population versus 104. This is looking really grim now for Lidakor. And let's not forget, Delhi is one of the most powerful civilizations in the game, if not the most powerful right now. It's just the fact that Beastie was able to raid the opponent's eco to death. It's all about that. Castle coming in the middle, and with that, Beastie should be able to prevent the opponent from having that sacred site as well. Trebuchet is also setting up to take down any buildings that Lidakor still has in the middle. And once again, groups of knights are being sent south, groups of knights are being sent north. It's all about that. Wave after wave of raiding. And one thing that Lidakor is going to have to figure out after this game, regardless of the result, is how he's going to stop the opponent's raids. He has to work with a lot more walls, because as you see, Beastie is doing a great job breaking stalemates, or even coming out of these difficult defensive positions by launching counterattacks, and these knights are just doing a tremendous amount of damage. They are the tools that Beastie is using to keep himself in this game. Wave after wave of knights. This wouldn't work so well with horsemen, because the horsemen don't have enough damage output for this. It's all about the ability to keep those knights alive in the opponent's base as long as possible, and just the fact that these units do a ton of damage, so even just 1 or 2 swings with that sword is going to take down 2 or 3 villagers quite easily. Third Town Center has been added here by Lidakor. He's realizing that he's in trouble. He needs to recuperate those villager losses. He needs to add a 3rd Town Center for that. But Beastie is now utilizing that to gain military momentum. And suddenly, we could see Beastie starting to secure the sacred sites as well, or just prevent the opponent from having it. And once we get to late game, what exactly does the Delhi have going for them if they have minimal amount of berries to access, and if they have no sacred sites? Basically nothing. And there is a castle coming up once again. I think that's a castle from Beastie and not Lidakor. If that castle is going up for Beastie, Lidakor is gonna be in an even more difficult position because he would lose those forward berries. And yup, that's a castle from Beastie. He does not see the elephants over there though, so this is going to be a nasty surprise for him. He's dropping the castle. Springolds are opening fire. The elephants don't seem to care about this one though. Lidakor is too busy. He's distracted by those raids, and he's not even noticing that he's got the window to stop this castle. Still no reaction to that castle. He obviously sees it because the Springolds are shooting at it, and by the time he's realizing that it's coming up at his face, it's going to be too late to stop. This is the distraction value that you're getting from those raids. Lidakor wasn't able to see the castle coming up in his face because he was too busy dealing with those raids, and suddenly a new castle is up over there, and Beastie's got enough stone for another one. He just keeps spamming castle after castle, expanding the network of castles bonus now. He's opening fire with his Springolds on the opponent's siege weapons, and suddenly Beastie is on a roll. He's 200 out of 200 population. His opponent, big army still, Springolds trading off against each other, but with that, most of the anti-siege here for Lidakor will be gone. Looks like he's able to retain 2 Springolds, and now the elephants, still being dangerous, could once again start coming for a counterattack, but now the knights moving in. And as long as there is an opening of Lidakor's base for those knights to come in, those knights will keep flooding in, keep picking off villagers left and right. Lidakor is still only at 58 villagers. The eco is not so great for Lidakor. Army still looking decent, 72 army. But if you look at the combination of the two factors, Beastie's got a way better eco and Beastie's got a slightly larger army. Trebuchet is now setting up and they're shelling the House of Wisdom. I think Lidakor is going to have to fight this one soon, simply because Beastie is going to target his landmarks. Same thing as in game number 1. Knights are breaking in on the left side, and you gotta wonder if Lidakor will be distracted once again. If he's focusing on addressing that counterattack, he might not even notice his landmark getting trapped down. 2 landmarks remain. It's the House of Wisdom and the starting TC, and both are within reach. And the elephants are shifting to the left. I think Lidakor is going to just address this issue with the raid and not notice that his town centers and of course the landmarks are gonna get taken down. This is very dangerous right now for Lidakor to be in. He's very close to losing those landmarks. Springolds rolling up as well, trying to focus down the Springolds of our red player Lidakor here. Looks like Lidakor is able to push away those Springolds for the time being, but he's going to lose his Siege Workshop. Beastie doesn't want to go for landmark snipes. He's just systematically grinding down the opponent's buildings in front, ultimately getting to those landmarks. But now the Knights are in, and once again, Lidakor has to pursue slow-moving army of men-at-arms, slow-moving army of elephants, and this is a window that Beastie is using. He doesn't care about these Knights at this point. It's all about running circles around the enemy in the middle of the enemy base, because you just want to distract the opponent as much as possible. You're focusing down the first town center here. Knights still trying to be annoying, trying to focus down the villagers on the wood line now. Stonewall's coming up for Beasties, walling in his opponent. Could Lidakor lose this game? I feel like we're getting closer and closer to a yes, because now it's a counterattack being launched by Lidakor. He's realizing that he needs to fight this one right here, right now. But pushing up against English castles here with a network of castles, potentially network of citadels bonus. Longbows in such large numbers. With spearmen and elephants only, that's not gonna work. Elephants have a ton of HP, but that many longbows will just wipe them out so easily. Elephants now pushing up hills here. This is the battle for the game almost. But there are so many castles here, and you see volley after volley, those longbows are grinding down the elephants. One elephant gets taken down, spearmen now coming in, trebuchets shelling the castles here for the English player. Second elephant getting close to destruction? That's exactly what is the case over here. Elephants, though, not stopping. They're not stopping, they're just pushing deeper and deeper into the base here of Beastie. Multiple castles firing upon those elephants. Infantry will take down the trebuchets, and suddenly we're looking at a successful counterattack by Lidakor. He's able to overrun the opponent with a lot of men-at-arms and elephants. Elephant numbers getting decimated over here, no healer behind. Boiling oil also being used on those elephants. Some of those elephants are heavily damaged though. Looks like another one gets taken down. On the right side, there is one that's low HP as well. It's gonna get killed. Trebuchets still shelling the castles, and the villagers are now being pulled by Beastie. He's got so many villagers that he's just going to pull them to take down the trebuchet. Keeps his own castle alive in the middle, and now the elephants are getting pushed back. Lidakor's army is disappearing, and he doesn't have the eco to replenish it. And with that, Lidakor is almost out of game number 3 as well. Boy oh boy, is he in a troublesome spot. Because now the longbows are starting to march into his base once again. Beastie did lose the trebs, which means that his push is going to be slowed down a tiny bit. But if you look at the overall population, it's 171 against 61. And Beastie could go into Imperial if he wanted to. Another... Oh, look at that. Beastie isn't messing around. He's dropping the Berkshire Palace in front of the opponent's base. Very risky, because if you lose this position, you will lose your Imperial Age progress. But he feels so confident in his position that he will just drop the Berkshire in front of the enemy base. Now, before anyone would say, hey, that's just, you know, disrespectful or anything like that, and he's just dropping a landmark in the opponent's face, the Berkshire is definitely good for this one. It's a long-range castle-style structure that's going to give you a very strong foothold here, so it makes a ton of sense for Beastie to get this up here. If he can get it up here, it's going to provide a lot of firepower. Look at that. Look at the range on that building. It's absolutely ludicrous. And it's a very strong defensive structure. Beastie once again is potentially pulling villagers even. Clad armor now being added, so men-at-arms will probably be on the menu. And he's taking that gold mine right in front of the opponent's base. He's taking every single bit of resource that he can access. He's rolling in the opponent. Lidakor is slowly building up an army once again. But you get the feel that this will be the last hurrah of Lidakor here. I don't think that he's going to be able to assemble another push here. So, basically, Lidakor will have to launch a counterattack here. Buy himself a ton of time. That's the problem for Lidakor. He needs a lot of time here. He needs to get his eco back on track. He needs to get to Imperial. And I don't think that he's going to have all that time available. His army is not so terrible. A lot of men-at-arms, some crossbows, some spearmen, and some elephants. But you get the feel that with cannon emplacements coming in at those castles, clock is ticking. And the moment Beastie gets some bombards or trebuchets, he can start taking down those buildings, the landmarks. Villagers are nearby, so they can start repairing that castle. The Berkshire Pass being shot right now by no less than 5 trebuchets. Elephants tempted to jump on those longbows. Soon, the elite longbowman upgrade will come in for Beastie, and that's going to make things a little more difficult. The Berkshire, though, being taken down here, so looks like the trebuchets will finish off the Berkshire quite fast, and with that, that 4th position gets a little weaker for Lenok able to push his opponent back for the time being. He is still standing. He's going to slowly run out of resources inside his own base, but Lenok might have just enough momentum to buy himself some breathing room. He's pushing up hills with the elephants. He's ready to set up the trebuchets. No springolds for Beastie just yet, but he could make those on the castles, and once he has the long-range springold upgrade, he can start snapping those trebuchets a little easier without the opponent being able to shoot back. Longbow's now opening up on the army. Another castle could be taken down here. No repair villagers out on the battlefield. Springolds trying to join up the fight, trying to take down the trebuchets. Another castle falls. The Longbow's now focusing down the infantry here. Looks like the spearmen are also able to take quite a lot of hits on those elephants, and there are only 2 elephants on the battlefield are heavily damaged. I think that the momentum is good here for Lenok, but it's going to be insufficient to clean up this entire forward, and he has to sacrifice everything he has for this. The first elephant falls, the second one is heavily damaged, and indeed the second elephant is gonna get taken down here in a matter of seconds. Crossbows getting forced back by the mangonels, some beautiful hits coming in for both sides with the mangonel fire, but ultimately it looks like the forces of Lenok are getting pushed back. He's shelling that castle, trying to take it down. If that castle stays alive for Beastie, I think he has the game, because Lenok won't be able to rebuild that army. New elephants appearing on the battlefield as the men-at-arms are jumping on those trebuchets. And indeed, Lenok taps out. He knows very well that he won't be able to push that position. And boy, oh boy, is Beastie playing strong here. 3-0. The patience in this game, but more importantly, the raids. It really was all about those raids. It looked so good for Lenok, but then he just lost 40-50 villagers to those raids, and this is basically the recipe so far by Beastie. Game number 1, the raids with the knights inside his base. Game number 2, raids once again with the knights on King of the Hill. And this game number 3, Lenok had 2 sacred sites, 2 forward castles, castle age advantage, and a much larger army than Beastie. The only way Beastie was able to recover is if he was going to be able to hold off the attack in his base, stall it out, and then somehow get a lot of raiding damage done. And he was able to do that. Lenok wasn't able to hold his opponent off from raiding his eco. And now Lenok is down 3 games. Beastie, key victory, and the moral-shattering victory as well. Because this one, Lenok probably felt like he has this. Probably most of us felt like Lenok has this. But suddenly Beastie comes back, kills 40-50 villagers, and you're just sitting there saying, oh shoot, how did I lose this game? Beastie's up 3-0. It's a best of 9, which means there is still 2 more for him to go. But now, Lenok needs to win one. There's no way that he's going to let this one slip out of his grasp in a 5-0 manner, I think. Lenok has played so well in the playoffs, but he needs to have one win here, because if he falls down 4-0, it's going to be an insanely difficult position for him to be in. We're coming in with game number 4 in a matter of seconds. Welcome back to Beastie QT versus Lenok. If you've seen the Delhi in the hands of Lenok in the previous game, now I got some good news for you, because it is Delhi for Beastie this time around. Lenok is going to be handling the Abbasids, Beastie spawning in on the right side of the map in the blue color, and on the left side is going to be Lenok playing as the Abbasid in red. This is, I believe, is going to be Lipany, which will make it a very interesting and appealing matchup, because this matchup is either Abbasid mirrors or Abbasid versus French, Abbasid Mongols, but most of the time this matchup has Abbasids, mainly because the Delhi were banned in the tournament by many players. But when you have the Delhi available, it's by far the better option among these 2 civilizations, because while both of these civilizations can leverage the power of the berries, of course, as we discussed in the previous game, the Delhi is just an absolute juggernaut of a civilization when it comes to early game economy, the ability to grab all the upgrades, talk about eco upgrades, talk about blacksmith upgrades, and most importantly, the ability to use that eco advantage and even the technology advantage to just flood out those units with efficient production. That's the lethal combination of the Delhi here, and that's going to be very difficult for the Abbasids to sub. Especially because the Abbasids are not famous for being able to flood out units. It's an economy-focused civilization at the beginning that translates that economy advantage into nice castle age timing nowadays, but they could easily find themselves being overrun by a lot of not really Dark Age, but more like Feudal Age units. Talk about archers, talk about horsemen, and this could be a difficult matchup for Lenok. So, going into game number 4 here, with his opponent so far at 3-0, when it comes to the scoreline, this is going to be a tough matchup. I would borderline say that Lidakor is playing from a civilization disadvantage position, and that's a bad sign. Because if Lidakor loses here, it would be match point for Beastie at 4-0. That would be absolutely heartbreaking for Lidakor. Looking at the statistics of the players, though, we got some interesting stats to take a look at, because Lidakor so far is undefeated with the Abbasid dynasty. There were 3 civilizations that Lidakor was undefeated with throughout the tournament: Abbasids, Delhi, and Rus. But he only played 1 Rus game and 1 Delhi game, whereas he played 4 Abbasid games. So Abbasid is actually one of his most popular civilization picks, and it's also a civilization that he has not lost with yet. Meanwhile, on the other side, for Beastie, Beastie has played Delhi twice, won twice. So far we have a civilization selection for both players that they have not lost with, which means that someone's streak is going to be broken over here. On the right side, we have Beastie operating with the berries for the time being, and Lidakor going up with the economy, being no surprise about that one. He's going for the berries as well. The question becomes if he's going for a second town center, because the problem here with the second town center play for the Abbasids is that this is basically going to completely ignore map control for Lidakor for a long, long time. He's basically sacrificing all map control for the sake of building up an eco lead. And surrendering map control to the opponent, Beastie, will just result in the Abbasid player losing all 3 sacred sites to the Delhi, and then of course those sacred sites will be turned into a ton of gold by the Delhi player. So you gotta wonder what exactly the game plan is here for Lidakor, but I'm not exactly sure if he can afford to go 2 town centers, and indeed, there's an archer range coming in. But the problem here is that if the Abbasids just play 1 town center, they're not going to be spectacular compared to the Delhi by any means. The scouting from Lidakor is very effective, as you see. Whereas on the other side, you could see for a brief moment that Beastie had a ton of sheep that he managed to gather. Look at that. That's around 10 to 15 sheep that he has to work with. And of course, he also has the berries. The map we are playing, by the way, is actually Arabia, not Lipany. Little bit surprising to see Abbasids here for Lidakor then, because oftentimes you save your berry civilizations, talk about Delhi or talk about Abbasids for Lipany, because those have more berries. So it's a little surprising to see that we are seeing Abbasids versus Delhi over here, but Delhi is no surprise, to be honest, for Beastie. It's a very powerful civilization on every single map, so you can pick it anywhere you want. Abbasid is a bit more surprising, I would say. Curious to see what Lidakor has on his mind for the other maps, talk about Lipany or so. But anyways, Beastie is going to scout the barracks and the archer range, so he knows exactly that there is going to be some aggression put up by the opponent, and that's a double blacksmith strategy here. So Beastie isn't going to pop out a ton of units at the beginning. You see, he only has a barracks right now, just now dropping a range. But he wants to go double blacksmith straight away, and with that, he's going to start pumping out those blacksmith upgrades for his units, and that's going to be camel archer horsemen. Now the camel archers, of course, will debuff enemy cavalry, and they'll be very effective against enemy spearmen. However, you also have to think about something. Camel archer horseman is extremely expensive, and it's going to be difficult to be able to match the opponent's numbers, because camel archers take a lot of time to train, they're expensive. Horsemen are also rather expensive here compared to the infantry flood. And Beastie could just overrun you with pure spearmen and archers here quite easily. Now, Beastie did not see the camel archer up until now, and as he's seeing it, he's retreating back into his own base. His berries are somewhat exposed, and that is why the backup source of food, the sheep, is still available for him. So he's gonna retreat underneath the town center. That's why you're always working towards finding sheep, no matter what the civilization you play, because you want to make sure that you have that backup to fall back to in case you get cut off from your primary source of food. One camel archer out here for Lidakor to harass the enemy. So far, no scholar garrisoned in that archer range to increase production. You only have 2 scholars in that mosque. Sanctity is coming in for Beastie, and he's grabbing the HP upgrade on the villagers as well, textiles. This is going to take quite a lot of town center time from him, but it's going to make it much easier for his villagers to survive, and now he's sending out the spears, sending out the archers, and the moment he does that, if Lidakor doesn't fight this one, he's going to find himself cut off from the sacred sites, and you see one spearman is escorting a scholar to the north. This is a great move from Beastie. He's taking a fight in the middle, but as he's distracting the opponent, Beastie is sneaking out to the north. Nice move from Lenok to diagnose that, though. He used the scout to make sure that the Scholar isn't able to get away, and with that, he spotted the Scholar escaping, sends in the Camel Archers, and picks off the Scholar. Now the Spearman also gets taken down, but Horsemen are ready to overrun all those Camels, and this is the problem that Lenok is facing. He's being overrun by larger numbers, and it's going to be very difficult for him to control all 3 Sacred Site. In fact, it's going to be very difficult for him to even control 2 of them. Fight in the middle is not something that was favorable for Beastie. He lost the Horseman to a Spearman. But down south, I think that's a Sacred Site that's about to be captured by Beastie. Horseman pushing back the army of Lenok here for the time being. There are some Spearmen in that group as well for Lenok, so it's going to push away the Horsemen. It looks like they're able to get some nice hits going. Archers able to pick off one of the Spearmen. Archer still trailing the second one. Nice micro from both sides over here, but slowly but surely you have the Horsemen going down from Lenok, and the healing ability of those Scholars are helping out big time here. Now, Herbal Medicine is an upgrade that's banned in the tournament, so that's not something that you can utilize to heal your units, but still, any unit that's able to heal your army here is going to be good, even without the healing upgrade on the Scholars. Army number 16 to only 9, and Lenok is definitely struggling maintaining that military presence. His army is very expensive, Camel Archers, Horsemen, Spearmen. He's just not dropping a second town center, but as you see behind this one, his opponent is starting to capture Sacred Sites, and I get the feel that the window might be shrinking here for Lenok, because his army so far wasn't able to prevent the opponent from capping those Sacred Sites. Down south, you already have that site captured. On the north, it's about to be capped. If you can capture the Sacred Site, it doesn't really matter that you lose the Scholar because you get so much gold from it. Looks like up north it's going to be a contested Sacred Site with the Scholar getting taken down. But this is just going to be a sign for Beastie that he won't be able to cap the north. He should just focus on the middle and the south, at least for the time being. He could also think about walling in the Sacred Sites. This is something that the Delhi players often do. Use the infantry to wall in the sites, and then it makes it much more difficult for the opponent to decap it. And you could see for a brief moment, Beastie is using the map control that he's gaining with the military numbers to get more berries for himself. More berries, of course, equals more army. And you gotta love how he's sneaking out villagers to the right side as well. It's risky because if Lenok ever finds them, that's minus 3, 4, 5 villagers. But I love the gamble for Beastie because that's a smart gamble. The reason why Lenok is likely not going to look there is because Lenok can't afford to spare any units. Lenok simply can't afford to send an army to those berries on the right side and probe them, because the moment he does that, he's surrendering the map control to the opponent in the middle, and basically gives him the Sacred Sites. So Beastie is ensuring the safety of those villagers on the right side on the berries by contesting the Sacred Sites and forcing Lenok to fight for those. Down south, Sacred Site being decapped, Beastie is sending a Horseman that way, but of course now gold is piling up for the Delhi player, and that's where things are getting worse and worse for the Abbasid player out here. Looks like up north we're going to have a scuffle as well in between the Horsemen and the Camel Archers. The Scholar might get picked off here. Sacred Site once again not going to be captured. That's the worst place to go right now for Beastie, to be honest, or at least his Scholars. That's the place where the Scholars always go to die. So Lenok is at least able to push away the opponent from the north, but it's still 2 Sacred Sites, and you see Beastie is now moving up with the scout. He wants to see if his opponent is playing 1 town center or 2. Lenok is banking up some resources, so Castle Age is not an impossible theory for him. But of course, the problem here is that the moment he thinks about Castle Age, he needs to stop making army. And if he stops making army, then he's going to lose all 3 Sacred Sites to the opponent. Here come the Horsemen, pushing the Berry Villagers once again. It's not going to be a great fight for Beastie here, but he just wants to get some ground for himself, and he's focusing down the Camel Archers. Now with the Camel Archers gone, the Spearmen can join the battle. The Scholars are also here to heal up. And with the villagers running to the right side, the scout is able to see them. Archers opening up on the villagers on the gold, and they're getting closer and closer to Beastie securing game number 4 in a row, moving into match point. What an absolute crazy set it would be if Beastie took it to 4-0 here. It would be insanely difficult for Lenok to come back now, because now you see Beastie on the way to Castle Age. House of Learning is on the way, and there is 2 Sacred Sites soon to be free. Lenok's villagers in the middle are getting intercepted. 41 villagers versus 48. All the villager advantage for Lenok is basically gone now. Is he sending out villagers? Oh yeah, he's sending out the villagers just to meet up with that army, trying to save them. But at this point, with Beastie getting up to Castle Age, this is an open map, so he can start using those knights that he can make once he gets to Castle Age to raid. We have seen Lenok losing a game with the Delhi getting to Castle Age. So it's not impossible for Beastie to still lose this game, but you get the feel that the army numbers are looking so much better for Beastie right now. Talk about 46 versus 26. He's got 2 Sacred Sites consistently, and he's getting up to Castle Age, and I don't think that he's going to lose the game like Lenok did in the previous one, because he knows very well that the only chance that Lenok has to get back in this game is somehow raiding him to oblivion. With that being said, Lenok isn't even mining gold. He lost all his gold miners, so he's still very far away from Castle Age. And in the middle, Sacred Site once again being captured. Army numbers steadily rising for Beastie. He's also grabbing all the Castle Age eco upgrades now. And Lenok probably knows that he needs to push this one right now. That's a 3rd town center that's being dropped by Lenok. So Lenok wants to go for a Juggernaut economy here. The question is, does he have the time? Because he only has a 10 villagers lead. Given time, he can build up that eco, but you see, he's also dropping farms. And if he's dropping farms, that's a sign that he's going to start running low on food. So maintaining villager production and army production at the same time could be a bit of a problem for him. He's trying to go for the gold. Horsemen once again coming for the raid, now with the veteran upgrade. And the archers are also closing distance. Siege weapons could become a reality very soon for Beastie. He could make some battering rams and start knocking on those walls. For now, he's satisfied denying the gold mine. There's the counterattack from Lenok though. And that is exactly the type of raid that he needs. We have seen in the previous game that the only way that the Delhi could lose this is by getting raided very heavily, and that's a huge raid coming in here. Beastie losing quite a few villagers. Could we see the Delhi losing 2 games in a row just by getting raided from the opponent? That would be a massive disaster for the Delhi, I have to say. Some men-at-arms are being pulled right now by Beastie. He's calling off his forces. Not a lot of spearmen left on the battlefield for Lenok, and you see Beastie's focusing down the spears with the town center fire, because he wants to get rid of those so that his horseman is sufficient to clean this up. If he kills all the spearmen, he can just send in the horsemen here to clean this up and have the rest of the force that he has stay on the battlefield in the front. Lenok also moved out to the left side to get some hunt for himself, so his food eco is still going to be set up for success, at least for the time being, but he's still in feudal age. Villager count steadily increasing for him though, 67 versus 45, and Beastie seemed to have hit a bit of a roadblock here. Now, one thing that Beastie could do is something very similar to what Lenok did in the previous game. Just try to go for a forward castle. Tower is being built as we speak by Beastie. He knows that Lenok is going for those berries, and now he's sending the horsemen over there. And it's going to be a difficult time for those wheels for Lenok. Horsemen now coming in on the gold miners. Lenok is going to spot those, react swiftly, and the horsemen won't be able to get a ton of villager kills. Villagers now running away from the berries as well. Despite the fact that Lenok has the villager advantage, we have to keep in mind that the efficiency is not so great for him, because he's constantly forced to run for his life. Not a great fight here for Beastie, fighting against the spearmen with all those horsemen, but now the archers are closing distance, and suddenly you could see Beastie's force unleashed upon the base of Lenok. 2 sacred sites consistently under the control of Beastie. He's also grabbing some relics, and now he's grabbing the sacred sites. That's the problem that Lenok is facing. He currently has a 27 villagers lead, but the opponent has map control, which is something that Beastie is using to get more berries. And more importantly, Beastie is going to have map control that allows him to secure relics. Walls are coming up for Lenok. He's doing the right things. Wall up, slow this game down, and then try to raid your opponent to death. That's exactly the recipe that Lenok needs to follow. Archers are now closing distance here. I think they have the veteran upgrade as well, and that's going to make this fight next to impossible for Lenok to take. And there is an elephant coming in. You don't need battering rams when you have elephants. 57 army versus only 18 though for Lenok. He doesn't have the numbers. And Beastie played a very similar matchup in the previous game. He knows very well that he can't allow Lenok to start raiding him. What's the best way to avoid that? The best way to avoid that is to just be the aggressor all the time. Keep pushing the opponent's base with elephants, keep pushing the opponent's base with siege weapons, and you see the first elephant now on the battlefield. Lack of mobility is something that could be concerning for Beastie. Bullo attempt in the middle, trying to push away those horsemen. It was successful pushing away the horsemen for the time being, but now they will jump on all of those scholars. Still 2 sacred sites for Beastie though, and of course he won't be able to maintain control over all 3 sacred sites all the time. But even just having 2 is going to be sufficient, because that's giving him a ton of gold. He's charging in with the archers and the man-at-arms. 2 towers were attempted by Lenok. Lenok is on the way to Castle Age. It's at least at 80% or so he's getting very close. And he has some raids going in here still. If Lenok gets to Castle, there's a glimpse of hope, because he could get some men-at-arms going. This being said, it's 65 army versus 24, and I think if Beastie starts making some siege weapons or just get some more elephants on the battlefield to take down buildings with, Lenok could still be in trouble. But Lenok gets to Castle Age at least, all 3 sacred sites under the control of Beastie, by the way, so the sacred site countdown is going off as we speak. Lenok is gonna have to neutralize one in less than 9 minutes. For now, he's building up his army, getting a couple of mangonels out. That is a great response to the archers that the opponent has. In general, a great response to the slow-moving army of the opponent. Forward tower coming from Beastie, though, he's getting ready for a castle. He's getting ready for a castle, dispatching a couple more lumberjacks towards stone. He knows it. Beastie knows very well that he just needs to finish this game here, and he could do that, for example, by intercepting a couple of villagers on the hunt. Archers and men-at-arms will jump on them. That's -5 again for Lenok. And despite the fact that he's possessing the villager lead, his villagers are constantly getting raided and harassed. And the more important thing is that Beastie is sitting on 4 relics and 3 sacred sites. So that's 1300 gold per minute. Whereas for Lenok, he's struggling for gold control. You can see it in top right, he's got 0 gold per minute. He's now back on gold, but 0 gold per minute right now is a sign that that's the only gold mine he's got access to. Elephants now starting to push up here, and they will just ignore every tower's fire. They might even ignore the mangonel fire, and they just march towards that gold mine. They know fully well that Lenok's only access to gold is right there, and that's the place that they have to push. And on the left side, the archers are also breaking in. Now, that is a defensive castle that Lenok has to make here to somehow hold this off, but how many villagers will have to be sacrificed for this? The men-at-arms will jump on this one. Mangonels are opening fire on the men-at-arms, so some of them might be wiped out. Scholars coming in here to heal. Forward castle is also being built by Beastie. Villagers going left and right to try and drop that castle. Castle is going to be finished here, but the elephants can open up against it immediately. So many villagers being taken down though. It's at least 15-20 villagers that were lost making this castle, and the castle up front here for Beastie is also going to be completed. And what's more important is that on the left side we also have a fight. There's a fight going on the left side, archers picking off villagers, and the men-at-arms trying to break through the walls as well, although you don't have a ton of those. Access to wood is soon going to be a luxury for Lenok. Access to gold is already a problem, and this is a huge concern right now for Lenok. He no longer has the villager lead even. He has dropped to 58 villagers as opposed to 60. So the price of that castle was huge. He was able to get it up and he's going to buy himself some time with that. But he basically sacrificed his entire economical advantage to try and get that castle up. He needed that castle. Because without that castle, he had no chance. And now he overchops the wood line. Lumberjacks once again fleeing back to the safety of the town center. And springolds will be made very soon here by Beastie. He's going to garrison those siege workshops with scholars as well. So he can produce siege springolds very easily. Mangonels shifting to the left side. Now you're seeing some horsemen push to the left as well. And as the mangonels shifted to the left, this is going to be a window that Beastie uses to push up with the elephants. He's marching straight into the base of the opponent. The castle has burning oil, but that's not so relevant against elephants, especially when you have 6 of them. They're knocking on the walls of that castle, and since there is archers sitting on top of those tower elephants, they will just start picking off the villagers sent to repair. One elephant trying to be pulled back here by Beastie. Scholars will probably be dispatched to try and heal up. Elephant goes down, and it looks like the castle lives to see another day. Stone miners for Lenok escaping to the left side, but his eco is becoming worse and worse, and now we're seeing some springolds being added. Next step for Beastie could be just trebuchets. If he gets 2 or 3 trebuchets, he can start shelling those castles. He has the map control, and let's not forget, it's 5 minutes left on the sacred site countdown, and all Beastie's coming in with the walls. I was just now thinking about that, but I said, look, I think it's too much effort. I was just now thinking about what if Beastie starts walling in the opponent, but I was like, no way he's going to do that, it's too much effort. But he can make it with the infantry, so it's a great idea. Wall in the enemy and basically force him to go through your only castle in the middle. Battering rams are now out, but you got some springolds to back this up here for Beastie. 5 minutes left on the countdown. Lenok down 3 games, could be down 4. He will be down 4 if he loses this battle here, I think. Elephants are pushing in, men-at-arms jumping on the villagers, archers focusing down the men-at-arms mostly. Mangonels are able to open up, and with the help of the castle's burning oil, all the men-at-arms get wiped out. Springolds rolling up though, trying to focus down the only mangonels here. Elephants focusing on the battering rams. Looks like it's going to be a retreat for the time being for Beastie, but he doesn't need to overextend here. I think Beastie went a little too greedy there trying to stop that castle. I don't blame him for it, because if he stops that, it's game over probably for Linok. But Linok lives to see another day. He still has 2 castles over here. The trebuchets still nowhere to be found. Springles should be able to take down that battering ram. Behind this one, Beastie's got 5 relics working for him too. Just look at that gold income, by the way. 1500 per minute, 3 sacred sites, 5 relics out there for Beastie. And even without any functional villager-based economy, that would be a juggernaut resource income that he's getting. Imagine that supported by some berries, because he had some berries to take still. He has some hunts to take. And that's the key thing here. Beastie basically has no villagers back at home, because the hunts are spread all across the map. He's using that. The gold mines are spread all across the map. He's using that as well. And you see, he's still taking berries. He is using that map control he has so well. And now he's pushing deep into the base of the opponent once again. Oh, look at that castle drop. That's a castle drop on the left side. He snuck in a couple of villagers as he's using these elephants as a distraction. The villagers are being picked apart on the south. Those villagers were sent for a castle on the left side, but it's not going to work out. I'm not sure which was the diversion and which was the main push. It's possible that the diversion was the villager push to pull away the archers from this castle, but it's also possible this was the diversion for him to get a castle up on the left side. Regardless of which was the diversion and which was the main push, the castle goes down, and with that, Linok taps out. Beastie QT is 1 game away from winning the N4C Grand Finals. It would be a clean sweep. He takes the next game, it's a clean sweep against Linok. Probably not something that any of us would have expected. We have seen Linok play so well in the playoffs, and honestly, going into today, I thought that Linok is probably going to take this Grand Finals. But Beastie's playing so clean. And he's punishing every single mistake that his opponent makes. Talk about especially the game number 3, the Altai game, where Linok didn't make any major mistakes other than just not having himself walled at the back, and he just died to cavalry raids. Small mistakes are being exploited so well here by Beastie, and now he takes down the opponent with the Delhi 4-0 lead in the favor of Beastie QT in the Grand Finals. He's 1 game away from being the champion of N4C. He was the 2nd place in the Swiss stage. He got into the semifinals directly, and he almost lost to Vortex. It was a very competitive, very back and forth set. 4-3 was the victory for him in there. It went down to 7 games, and Beastie was able to win that. He almost lost to Vortex in the semifinals, and he's 1 game away from sweeping Linok in the Grand Finals. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 5. In this best of 9 between Beastie and Linok, Beastie so far, absolutely insane performance. 4-0 sweep of Linok so far, and Linok is no pushover. He has been one of the best players in the tournament. He took down Marine Lord 4-1, the same Marine Lord that dominated the Swiss stage. And if we look at their previous matchup, as I said, Linok played against Beastie. In that set, Beastie won 3-1, so even that wasn't a clean sweep. Now we're going into Hill and Dale with Mongols versus HRE. This is where Beastie pops out his Mongols, and this is a civilization matchup where the HRE will have a very difficult time. You often see this map being used as HRE mirrors, but if there is any civilization that can really make it difficult for HRE, that could be the Mongols. Beast is going to be using them on the north in blue, and down south it is Linok playing as the HRE in red. Looking at the stats of the players on this map, Linok does have a complete clean sheet on this map. 3 wins, 0 losses on Hill and Dale. That's a good sign for him going into this game. Whereas on the other side, it is 3 wins, 1 loss for Beastie QT. So pretty decent performance so far in the tournament on this map. Looking at the civilizations though, once again, Beastie QT has a negative win rate with this civilization that he's using. He only has 1 out of 4 games won with Mongols. But keep in mind, in the English game that he played on Altai, he also was winless with English in the tournament so far, and he was able to pull off a win. Meanwhile, on the other side, for Linok, he has played Holy Roman Empire 3 times in the tournament, and has won 2 out of the 3 games. Looks like a 4th villager is coming in. Now, obviously, walling in the opponent with the Mongols is never an option, because you can't make walls. But you can make towers, and one thing that you can do is make it very difficult for your opponent to leave his base, and then use that to play a semi-fast castle-style approach. Linok is going to see the opponent with the barracks. there is going to be double spearman. Now, one thing that Lenok has to respect is that even though he's getting the walls up, there is an option for Beastie to chop through. And that's something that you should not be forgotten. But if you chop through, you should wait for your spears. If you chop through right now, Lenok is going to have a chance to react. I think this is a little premature by Beastie. This is a little premature because Lenok is going to see that. I think that's actually a pretty significant mistake. A bit of a misclick out there. Willows are now coming up. Spearman on the way as well. Scout also being pulled by Lenok. Beastie chopping through. Choppity chop chop. There is going to be another chop attempt here through those next layer of walls, by the way. He's chopping down the first three. Spearman appearing on the battlefield. The Khan coming in from behind. Lenok is going to have to commit a lot of effort into making sure that these walls go up, because if they don't, he's going to be in trouble. Looks like the Spearmen are running a circle around the base of the opponent. They're giving up on that push on the middle, and the Villager is also coming over. This is something that's definitely buying a lot of time for Lenok here, however, and you got the gold mine quite safe behind the town center. The food sources are not so safe, though. If you look at the food sources of Lenok, his hunts, his berries are all on the southern part of his base. So food denial could be part of the equation here for Beastie, and he's coming in. He's going to send in the Khan to harass the lumberjacks, and for a brief moment you could see that there isn't really a ton of sheep under the town center here for Lenok. Food denial is not something that you commonly see when you talk about Mongols trying to stop the HRE from a fast castle play here, but food denial could be part of the equation here right now for Beastie. Beastie has been mining quite a lot of gold, so he's going to readjust his villagers now, working towards the food now, and we are going to see a tower being dropped no matter what. And it's all going to be about denying that food income, and that is also a great way to slow down the advance of the HRE to Castle Age. In fact, it's probably even a better way to do that compared to gold denial, because if the HRE player feels that there is going to be pressure coming towards the gold, they can still adjust to a new gold mine, and they don't need as much gold as they need from food. So food denial can work very nicely. Of course, now the target is going to be the food line now that Beastie has an angle on it. Walls are coming up for Lenok on the northern side as well. Khan is going to be there to harass the villagers, but he shouldn't be able to stop the walls. Feudal Age is in, and as in the case of most Mongol tower rushes, you're expecting an archer range here for Lenok. Indeed, here it goes. Spearman, of course, getting a couple of hits on that scout for Lenok, so Lenok is going to have to call back his scouts. Second archer range coming in, or no, it's just the first one. The initial archer range was cancelled and replaced elsewhere, simply because there were some spearmen coming nearby. Scouts now being sent out to torch down the tower. Villager not jumping into the tower just yet. A bit of a miss micro there by Beastie. Villager is still exposed to the scouts. He decided not to jump into the tower, instead engage up north with a new tower, and then also use the spearman to just guard that villager. For Beastie, he's on the way to Feudal Age, I do presume, with the deer stones. Tower is now up, and now it's shooting at the villagers on the wood line. The other wood line is rather safe for Lenok, so he can just send the villagers to the other side. I think that Lenok is in a good position to hold off this tower rush. This is a scary push, but it's not super intimidating, to be honest. Because now you got the archers, now you got the other wood line to work with, and once the archer is out there, you might even be able to stop that tower from Beastie. Archer should focus down that villager, but it's very difficult because the Khan is going to pop the speed arrow, the spearman jumping on the archer, and it's all about buying time here for Beastie to get that tower up. He's up to feudal, which means arrow slits are coming in for that tower, and now Lenok is abandoning his wood line here for the time being. The growing concern for Lenok is that his food count isn't spectacular. Horsemen are now being added by Lenok as well. Those could be used as a counterattack unit as well, because of course Beastie can't really evolve himself. And it looks like for now Beastie is just going to settle with a standard 2-tower layout here. He might be able to tower the food, actually, like the hunt. That would be a great way to cut off the opponent from food. Can he even reach the villagers under the TC? That would be annoying for Lenok. He has to pull the sheep to the right side indeed. This would be very problematic for Lenok because he's losing 2 sheep carcasses that way. The sheep carcasses that were right next to the town center on the left, he won't be able to access them because of that tower. Beastie is mining a ton of gold here. He's dropping a new tower on that gold mine. Lenok does have gold income. He is able to access his gold mine. But one thing that Lenok doesn't really have is great food income. He's got the sheep, of course, but it's not something that's going to be sustainable forever. And archers getting picked off by the tower fire. Beastie is actually in a way better spot than I anticipated, because Lenok is pinned inside his own base, and the thing is that Beastie is getting closer and closer to Castle Age. Tower on the right side will be denied. That's the first great happening of the game, I think, for Lidakor. He's gonna be able to pick off the villager, and finally something going well for Lidakor here. It was a long time overdue because, I'm not going to lie, in the last couple of games, things just went very badly for him. Not necessarily all of that was his fault. It's just, the fact that all the bad things are piling up on top of your head at some time. But now, he's gonna be in a pretty decent position to hold off the tower rush, and at least his castle age won't be that much worse than the opponent's castle age timing. Beast is still pretty active with that Khan trying to harass the gold miners. Castle age getting closer and closer for both players. Now, looking at the relic spawns, that's actually quite unfavorable for Lidakor. He's got one relic that's guaranteed, a second one that's relatively decent. One guaranteed relic on the right side for Beastie, and then two sort of in the middle ground, one of them slightly closer to Beastie. I'm not saying that this is a very favorable towards Beastie either, but it's slightly better for Beastie, I must say. One horseman is being sent over. That's a nice counterattack. Beastie has something coming out of that barracks. That's just a couple of spearmen. So Beastie probably saw the horseman being sent over. It's a great move from Lidakor to send over the horseman because he's anticipating his opponent to be completely defenseless back at home. Spearmen down, back at home, however, and that's going to help Beastie push away those horsemen for the time being. So far, no reaction, but he's focusing, of course, on the towers. Now he's going to take the fight, though, and he's going to kill one of the horsemen quite easily. Two scouts, one more horseman coming out here, as Beastie is ready to go up to castle age. Pretty much identical time compared to the HRE here, and I think that's a win for the Mongols. If the Mongols can match the HRE's castle age timing, then that's a win for the Mongols. Ragnitz Cathedral versus Step Redoubt coming in, and now the question becomes how Beastie is going to deny the relics from the opponent, because if he can deny the relics from the HRE, Lidakor is going to be in a terrible position. But if Lidakor can get 2 or 3 relics, then Lidakor is going to be in a great spot, because he can wall his base up and just play defensive, whereas Beastie's base will be wide open with the Mongols. This is the big question mark with the Mongols. Can you keep your eco safe? You always have to have the military presence to make sure that the opponent cannot raid you. The moment Lidakor is able to start raiding Beastie, Beastie's gonna be in trouble because he can't just wall himself off. Lidakor is putting a lot of effort into trying to intercept that Khan, and he might be able to with that horseman. Khan now getting up to castle age. That is going to give some extra HP to the Khan. It's going to give some extra damage, and with that, the Khan should be able to get away from this one, I do believe. Nope, the Khan gets killed. Wait a minute. That's a half-dead Khan. That's Schrodinger's Khan. The Khan was killed the very moment he got up to castle age. It looks like, according to the overlay, it is going to be replenished, so it counts as a dead Khan. But I guess the thing is that the moment the final stab came in from that horseman to kill the Khan was upgraded to a castle age Khan. So for a brief moment it was dead, and then suddenly it received an HP buff, and it looks like the Khan is going to remain there, at least in a non-existing physical form without a soul or something. That's really Schrodinger's Khan. He's half dead, half alive. This being said, we got 3 relics coming in here for Lidakor, so while we were focusing on that Khan getting very, very freaky, we have Lidakor with 3 relics, Villager getting picked off, and now things are going bad for Beastie. Things are going pretty bad for Beastie right now. He's going to get a chance with these Lancers to intercept the archers, and he might be able to take the 2 relics for himself. But Lidakor was able to get to 3 relics with the Ragnitz Cathedral without any major problems, and suddenly the HRE eco is going to start kicking in. This is probably one of the best spots that Lidakor has been in the entire tournament. His position right now is comparable to what his position was in the Altai game. He had a massive lead, and I think right now he also has a massive lead, because from this point on, all he needs to do is just either wall himself up and play defensive, or just start popping out knights left and right and start raiding Beastie's eco. Sacred Site for a brief moment was capped by Lidakor. Instead, he's heading towards the north, trying to grab that relic as well. You saw some knights coming over from Beastie, but the knight numbers now can be matched by the HRE without problems, because while the HRE doesn't have the double training, they will have a much better economy. New Khan is out there, and it looks like that half-dead, half-alive Khan is now disappearing from the battlefield. Villagers are being sent south to make those walls, and the Lancers are ready for them, but they just miss out on the vills. Oh, nope. Beastie turns around. Beastie turns around, that's going to be a couple of dead villagers here for Lenok. Of course, being the HRE, not a disaster. You can replenish your villagers once you get to Imperial with the Palace of Schwabia. The question is, should you go into Imperial with the Palace of Schwabia here? And I think the answer is no just yet. Volo attempt coming in here by Lenok, and he gets the conversion on the Spearman. As I said, something started here for Lenok. Things started to go good now, and suddenly a bunch of things are favoring him now in this game. I think finally the ice might be broken, because the last 1 or 2 games were sort of disasters, but now we are back on track for Lenok. So at this point, he's gonna have to be prepared for the fact that he's going to get pushed heavily by the Mongols. So I think it should be Vo's defensive gameplay, keep matching the knight numbers of the opponent, and then once you have a window and once you're fully walled, you can think about Imperial Age. Knight numbers are somewhat comparable. You have 10 knights for Beastie, only 6 right now for Lenok, and knights are coming in for Beastie. You still have to respect the fact that if you lose a lot of villagers and you're far away from Imperial, the HRE eco could have issues. Because of course you can just buy food with the gold that you get from Regnitz Cathedral, but the market prices will start dropping and dropping. So you can't really afford to lose a ton of villagers, especially if you don't intend to go up to Imperial anytime soon. If Lenok is planning to go up into Imperial in the next, let's say, 3-4 minutes, not a disaster to lose a couple of vills, but if the plan is to go along Castle Age, he could be in trouble. Looks like he's charging in the middle with a couple of men-at-arms, some Landsknechte and some knights, but that's not a good fight for him because the knight numbers are not there, and the Landsknechte will be fairly poor against all those knights. Town Center Fire could also help wiping out most of those forces, and he's also raiding the opponent's base. Not a Landsknechte could jump on the gold miners though, so you gotta fight this one if you're Beastie. Otherwise, you're going to start losing villagers. That's 1 villager taken down, 2 more villagers fall. That's the danger that you're facing when you're up against Landsknechte with your villagers. 3 villagers went down here from Beastie. In the meantime, Lenok is struggling with food a tiny bit, and now his lumberjacks could be exposed. The Khan is coming in here to support the knights, and there is no army back at home here for Lenok. He has to make a run for this one with the villagers. The left side is still open, and that is a window that Lenok is going to have to address very soon. Because if he doesn't, the knights will just keep coming in. Looks like he also overchopped the middle, which allows Beastie to escape for the time being. But the clear corridor for entry is on the left side. As long as that remains open, and it's pretty difficult right now for Lenok to close because of the tower still being there, as long as that remains open, Beastie has the chance to raid his opponent, and this wouldn't be the first game where Beastie's raids would collapse Lenok's eco. So Lenok has to be very careful about that, and it looks like Schrödinger's Khan is still out there. Yeah, he's still chilling there. Half dead, half alive. Numbers not looking so good anymore for Lenok. You see, he's got 7 knights, 3 Landsknechte, 1 prelate. The problem that he's having right now is that the Landsknechte are not good against knights at all. The knights will just run away from them, stretch them out, and they will engage them in small groups where the area damage doesn't help. Landsknechte would be great if you had spearmen against you, but against the knights they won't perform that well, because the knights have a ton of HP, and while they won't be that terrible, they're very expensive as well on the gold cost. Part of the reason why Lenok is making Landsknechte could be because he's low on food, but he's got a ton of gold to work with, and the Landsknechte are low on food and high on the gold count when it comes to their cost. So for the eco balance or the eco setup that Lenok currently has, the Landsknechte is a unit that he can consistently afford, unlike the Knights, which are a lot food heavier. So you see, his food bank is pretty much empty. Knights are now burning their way through those walls, and we also got some Lancers inside the base of Lenok. Once again, Beastie is coming in for a raid. He's going to pick off a couple of villagers here, make it 2, make it 3, and on the front, you also see those Lancers breaking into the base of Lenok. Could we once again see Beastie's raids collapsing the eco of Lenok? Lenok is sitting on 3 relics, but he's not going into Imperial, and his villager count is going to start plummeting very soon to those raids. And if that happens, his food eco collapses. And if the food eco collapses, he won't be able to make more army. Boy oh boy, this is match point, by the way. If Beastie wins this game, he's going to be the champion of N4C, and he's killing villagers left and right. In just the blink of an eye, we're looking at 31 villagers for Lenok. Gold income is very nice, but what are you gonna do if you don't have any food income? And if you have no food income, you'll have to buy food. but the prices of the market will just drop and drop and drop, and it's going to be even worse for you to buy food than it was 2 minutes ago. Looks like the Khan is going to be getting out there alive. Khan got out, and you see now Beast is coming in from multiple directions. He's coming in through the front, coming in through the left, and it's all about stretching out the attention of Lidakor. Lidakor is going to have to reroll this one. The Khan gets picked off. This time around, it's actually a dead Khan. I wonder if the semi-dead Khan is still out there. I think he is. New tower coming up. That's a clever move from Beastie. He needs to keep that corridor open as long as possible, because the only way Lidakor recovers is if he's able to vow up and then get to Imperial with the Pass of Schwabia. In that case, he can get back the villagers that he lost. If not, he's gonna be in trouble, because his villager count is not looking spectacular, and even with 3 relics in the Regnitz Cathedral, it's going to be difficult to maintain a good food economy and wood economy. Looks like the tower is going to be complete. The villager on the other side is not gonna get intercepted by the Lancers. In the middle, it does, as now the new knights that are coming in will be filed off by the forces of Lidakor. And villager trying to stop those walls. Looks like Beastie is not going to be able to stop the walls, and his forward is getting cleaned up. But in the middle, you also have some forces coming in from Beastie. So once again, it's just pressure from all directions. Lidakor finally gets a bit of a breathing room here, and that is a much-needed breathing room right now. The problem is that, once again, knights are coming in, and you see that Beastie is also crawling up with towers. And you gotta respect that, because that's going to give Yam network for Beastie up front. And of course, it's also going to be something that delivers some extra firepower in battles. We didn't see a lot of crossbows from either side, and I wonder if that's going to be an addition from either of the parties. Looks like that's not going to be the case. Beastie's splitting up his knights, sending in wave after wave of knights. He knows very well that he's going to lose these units, but it's all about the raids, all about taking the initiative. And as you see, he's surrounding the opponent's base with towers everywhere. He pretty much just wants to suffocate the opponent, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him trying to capture the sacred sites after this. Keep raiding, pin the opponent back inside his base, and then start capping sacred sites. Lidakor is down to 29 villagers, and if you look at the resource income per minute, I have bad news for you, Lidakor fans, because this is not looking great for him anymore. He lost so many villagers that the Regnitz Cathedral is no longer able to compensate for it. Suddenly, Beastie, having the villagers, of course, with the step redoubt working, he actually has more efficient villagers than 55. If you count the step redoubt boosting those villagers as extra villagers, basically, the eco lead here for Beastie is massive. And even the Regnitz Cathedral is not enough to compensate for it. Now Beastie is picking up relics as well. Knights are breaking on the south. It's very hard to say, but I'm starting to feel like Lidakor is losing this one. I'm starting to feel like Beastie is taking control, because he's securing the map. That's the Pass of Schwabia being built. That is going to be the saving grace for Lidakor. He needs to get that Pass of Schwabia up. And the moment Beastie sees it, he's gonna be like, oh shoot, I'm in trouble. Because that Pass of Schwabia goes up, all that villager discrepancy goes away. Lidakor knows very well that he needs to get up to Imperial. He's going to sacrifice a bunch of villagers even getting that up. He's down to 24 vills, but it won't matter, because he's gonna be up to Imperial. Beastie, his own eco advantage will disappear in a matter of seconds. He's got 2 relics, he's about to capture the sacred sites, so he's still going to be in a good position, but all the damage that he has done to Lidakor is basically going to be useless now. So let's do some math over here. Currently we have a discrepancy of about 30 villagers. Every 15 seconds, the HRA player gains 3 villagers advantage. Actually, no, every 20 seconds, they gain 3 villagers advantage. Which means that you need 200 seconds only to compensate for the villager deficit that Lidakor has. 3 minutes. 3 minutes of time, Lidakor is going to have the same amount of villagers as Beastie will. And the question is Beastie thinking about Imperial? Because if he doesn't, his unit composition isn't going to be spectacular compared to what the opponent can field, because Lidakor is just going to go Elite Knights. He's already grabbing the upgrade. And once again, we're going back to the stage where Lidakor was able to pick up 3 relics so easily. All the aggression from Beastie, yet his opponent was able to acquire 3 relics without any major problems or conflicts, and now Lidakor is the aggressor. And this is the moment where Beastie's chances are disappearing in just split seconds. Because the moment Lidakor becomes the aggressor, the moment Lidakor is the one raiding the opponent, the Mongols can't stop that. Because right now Lidakor is sitting behind walls, and Beastie, he's going to have to somehow stop knights from coming into his eco every once in a while, killing villagers. For now, he's gonna have the crossbows and knights to fight that, so that's a great reaction at the beginning. But of course, lack of mobility is something that's going to start haunting him very soon. Not a fight that Lidakor necessarily wants to take, though. Looks like he's taking it nonetheless. Crossbows will help out push back the knights for the time being. Villager count's getting closer and closer. Beastie still nowhere close to Imperial. His food count is very low. His gold count is looking great. But his food count is actually terrible. 300 food in the bank only. Lidakor has gotten back on track with the villagers as expected. Now he's got elite knights, and this is where the window for the Mongols is closing rapidly. Just like in the case of French versus Mongols matchup on King of the Hill, the Mongols have that early game window, and once we get to late game, they're in trouble. And this is exactly what's happening here. The HRE will be able to wall themselves up, and they cannot, which means that it's going to be difficult for them to just hang on to their eco. The other concern for Beastie is that he's still in Castle Agent, he's not going into Imperial. If he balanced out his eco, he could go into Castle, or Imperial, and he could... Oh yeah, he can't really buy food. If you do the math on this, his opponent was buying a ton of food, we could see that. So the market prices on the food has to be stellar, probably 200 gold per 100 food. So Beastie doesn't really have the option to buy himself up efficiently at least. He would need to spend all the gold he has to get the food he needs. He's banking up food, so I'm thinking that he's going into Imperial soon. He's going to lose the Shaman. And he still has a formidable force of what it seems to be just mostly Spearmen and some Knights. The Spearmen will hold off the Knights for the time being, as you see defensive towers are being pulled. But the response from Lidakor to that is going to be the Landsknechte. And previously I said that those Landsknechte won't work well against Knights. They definitely don't. But against Spearmen they're spectacular. So Knights and Landsknechte here will be a dangerous, dangerous composition for Beast to fight against. He has the units to do that. If he gets to Imperial, it's going to be Springald, Spearman, Mangonel for him. But even that is going to be difficult because the HRE will have Culverins. So it likely should be Springald, Spearman, Mangonel for the Mongols versus Landsknechte, Knights, and Culverins from the HRE. That's probably the unit composition you're looking into. Villager count is now in the favor of Lidakor. He's at 72 as opposed to 69. Very nice for Beastie. He's on the way to Imperial though, so at least he's through the worst. One of the most dangerous things about the HRE is that they beat you to Imperial, and then they destroy you with Elite Knights and Bombards. Beastie is not going to fall to that, so at least it's going to be an even Imperial warfare here. But of course, the ability for the HRE to raid him is going to help quite a lot, and this is something that Lidakor has to build on. Lidakor has to build on the fact that he can raid the opponent, while the opponent is going to have a much harder time doing that, because Lidakor himself has the walls up. Towers are placed all across the map by Beastie, by the way, so he basically has the YAM network affecting his army the entire map. And let's not forget, he's got 2 Sacred Sites, 2 Relics, so his own resource income, his own gold income from those is still quite substantial. Here come the Mangonels. Looks like it's going to be Men-at-Arms being added. That's probably the better unit now for Lidakor, because while the Men-at-Arms take a little more time to kill those spears, they're a lot sturdier, so they will withstand a lot more Mangonel fire. First Bombard now coming out, it's going to be able to take down the first couple of towers here. Right now, Beastie is just using those towers as a bit of a buffer, buy himself some time. Bombard setting up and taking down the second tower. On the right side, bit of an incursion here by the forces of Beastie. He wants to probe the base of Lidakor. Lidakor's army numbers aren't looking spectacular. He's 38 right now, as opposed to 52. Did Lidakor see this? It doesn't seem like it. The Spearmen are marching straight into that gold mine, and let's not forget, while Lidakor does have the 3 relics in the Regnitz Cathedral, he doesn't have a ton of resources left on that hill, and it looks like the villagers are just getting slain. Lidakor did not notice this, and now he's going to pay the price. He's going to lose a couple of villagers. Not a disaster though, of course. He can recuperate those losses with the Pulse of Schwabia in seconds, so this raid isn't really doing much here for Beastie. What is going to be a much more impactful raid is the night push coming in from Lidakor to the north. Looks like it will be intercepted by crossbows and spearmen. Beastie is doing a great job diagnosing those raids. He can see them with the towers that he has placed. So if we ever see the POV of Beastie, you will see all the line of sight there for Beastie. And that's going to be a key thing. Beastie being able to see the entire map is extremely important here, because he needs to know where those attacks are coming from. He can't wall himself up, so the only way that he's going to stop it is if he has army there. And for that, he needs to know where the attack is coming from and when it's coming. Beastie is still in full retreat mode for the time being, but he has been adding a lot of Springolds, he has been adding a lot of Mangonels, and you gotta be careful here with that army if you're Lidakor. Because Lidakor didn't see the Springolds and the Mangonels yet, and it could come as a nasty surprise for him. His Men-at-Arms Landsknecht army is quite good. In fact, it's going to be great against everything that the Beastie has, other than the Mangonels. The Mangonels could still do a ton of damage to them. And now the Man-at-Arms are coming in. Also, some crossbows are on the battlefield. Mismicroed heavily by Beastie, sending the Springolds forward. Big battle unfolding. Mangonels unleashing fire in the middle. Crossbows also helping out a lot against the Men-at-Arms. And it looks like the first round of this battle is being won by Beastie. His Springolds are opening fire against the Bombard. And the crossbows are decimating all of those heavy infantry from Lidakor. Now the Knights are trying to jump on the Mangonels. Crossbows aren't focusing them down. So Lidakor is able to take down one Mangonel. He might be able to take down a second Mangonel. And now it is the infantry flood of the HRE here that's forcing Beastie back into his own base. The crossbows are being overrun by Men-at-Arms, and that's the problem here for Beastie. He wasn't able to keep that Mangonel alive to help out against that infantry flood. And now he's getting forced all the way back into his base. 28 army versus 46. This is looking like a great fight for Lidakor. He's getting closer and closer to his first victory in this set. It's insanely important for him right now, of course. It's match point for Beastie. It's now or never for Lidakor. And he's in a good spot. Lidakor is in a good spot, but we have to keep in mind that Beastie still has 2 sacred sites. He's got a lot of towers across the map, which means that Lidakor might need to get rid of many of those in order to make sure that Beastie doesn't have the YAM network all across the map. And this is giving a bit of a time for Beastie. Beastie's position here is really difficult still, so if I had to make predictions, I'll probably say that Beastie has a chance of like 25% maybe or so, maybe even less than that. This being said, we have seen some crazy battles here by Beastie, games that shouldn't have been won, yet were won in the end. Looks like he might be able to take down the Bombard. He is coming in with his Springolds, snipes the Bombard, crossbows are now pushing up. Looks like towers will be built on the front as well by Lidakor, so he knows the drill as well. Get map control, and then capitalize on that map control, secure some more ground. Siege weapons now trading off against each other over here. Bombards will just focus down the Springolds. No more Springolds on the battlefield for Beastie. Looks like he's losing the sacred site on the right side as well. Beastie's resource bank isn't looking terrible, and he actually has a ton of stone to work with. But his army isn't stellar at all. Mangonels, however, opening fire, and this could be terrible. The Landsknechte getting a huge hit on top of their head. Men-at-Arms also suffering from a lot of damage. New volley coming out as well. Wipes out quite a lot of infantry here. Crossbows still ready to focus down all those Men-at-Arms. Looks like the Mangonels are getting taken down by the infantry, but so many of those infantry units are heavily damaged, and you gotta wonder, especially with hand cannoneers being mixed in there, how long these guys will survive. Wasn't a great fight for Beastie, but it's probably the best fight that he could have taken. More infantry coming out though for Lidakor, steadily at 69 army. If the hand cannoneer numbers start increasing for Beastie, that could make things very difficult for Lidakor. But the main question is, does Beastie have time to build up his numbers? He's switching to Men-at-Arms and hand cannoneers, supported by some Bombards, but the numbers are just overwhelming at this point, really. Lidakor is steadily at 60 plus army. Beast is struggling with numbers big time. He needs to use the YAM network to fall back. He needs like 10-15 more hand cannoneers to have any shot at stopping this, I think. Men-at-Arms once again sent in, taking down the Bombard out there. There is a Bombard tower on this hill for Beastie, trying to slow down this push as much as possible. But the expensive hand cannons are also being taken down in melee by the Men-at-Arms. You can't afford to lose your hand cannoneers like that. You need to pull them back constantly. You need to have some sort of cheap meat shield, spearmen or Men-at-Arms in front of them. Because if you don't have that, the hand cannoneers are just too expensive to lose in melee. 13 army, 11 for Beastie only. I don't think that Lidakor is letting this slip out of his grasp. Lidakor is steadily at 60 military population, and the only reason why he doesn't have more is because he is at 200 population right now. Beastie is at 84. Lidakor is not going down here 5-0. He's going to live to see another day, because I think this game is now next to impossible for Beastie. No shot for him to raid his way back into this game, and now the Men-at-Arms will just swarm his eco. The villagers on the food are getting pushed. It has to be just a matter of seconds here for Beastie, because he won't be able to hold off this next wave. The Mangonel shots are still very effective. but it's just the swarm right now. A bunch of angry bees with maces in their hands, so to say. They are the ones swarming your eco, and even though there are a handful of hand cannoneers to slow this down, Mangonel gets taken down. Linok at this point doesn't even care about getting some Mangonel hits on the Man-at-Arms because he knows that he's got overwhelming numbers, overpowers the opponent, and with that, Linok takes game number 5. It was match point. It was match point for Beastie, yet Linok wins a crucial game here in game number 5. Mongols, a civilization that, as I said, Beastie didn't have a good win rate with. So going back into this one, Beastie's Mongols were used 4 times, and he lost 3 out of those 4 games. Now it's going to be 4 out of 5 losses. HRE, on the other hand, was a pretty decent civilization for Linok, but the key thing that we go back to is that despite the fact that the aggression at the beginning was great from Beastie, he wasn't able to deny the relics. He was able to do everything else, set the towers up, keep raiding, but he wasn't able to deny the relics. And the moment Linok was able to grab relics, he was able to get to Imperial, compensate for the villager losses with the Palace of Swabia, and ultimately win the game just by having a juggernaut economy over the opponent. Key victory here, but for the first time in this set, we're going to play the home map of Beastie, and we'll have to see what Beastie has in store for us over there. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 6 between Beastie QT and Linok. This is still match point for Beastie. The only way Linok can win the $100,000 N4C Grand Finals is if he somehow reverse sweeps his opponent here, but that's going to be awfully difficult. Spawning it on the northern side of the map is going to be Beastie QT playing as the Abbasids in blue, and down south we will have Linok playing as the Rus in red. Second Scout has been added by Beastie to try and battle for those huntables here. The map is high view, which means that we have a ton of predators to lure as well. As you see, Beastie is committing one scout to try and take down the deer, and he's using the other scout to try and find wolves, because ultimately, the source of gold or the source of most bounty for the Rus will be the wolves and not the hunt. With that being said, we can take a look at the statistics of the players with these civilizations, because this is where I want to go back to what I said on the Mongolian Heights game. Linok did not use Rus very frequently. In fact, he only played 1 game with Rus in the entire tournament. That is a massive wildcard for him. It could be a great civilization, it could be a terrible civilization for him. One thing is sure, Rus is a good civilization on this map, but Abbasids also do have a reasonable matchup against them. Talk about the Camel Archers being able to debuff enemy cavalry, talk about Camel Archers being a very good unit against Horse Archers in general, and talk about the fact that the Abbasids have one of the highest win rates in the tournament actually, thanks to the fact that they have a juggernaut economy. Speaking of Abbasids, Beastie has 3 wins and 1 losses with the Abbasid dynasty so far, so positive win rate for him with the civilization. Looking at Linok's POV, he's at 105 with the bounty, but he hasn't found 3 wolves to the south of his base just yet. That would be quite a lot of extra bounty for him to grab, and I think he's yet to find it, but he's walking in that direction, and if he finds that, he's going to easily reach the 300 mark, I believe, because he's got wolves aggroed with multiple scouts here. Meanwhile, for Beastie, he lures in 2 wolves with 1 scout. The other scout is also being trailed by at least 1. So he was able to deny around 50, 75 to 100 bounty from the opponent, wolf-wise. He was also able to deny some from the deer. But ultimately, his opponent have no trouble getting to level 2 bounty. And he's probably going to be well beyond that in the 300s region. That's indeed 100 gold following that scout. Only level 1 bounty right now for Linok. He's also killing the sheep for that. There is another wolf coming in. And with that, he's going to be at 250 after those wolves are being lured in. But I think there is still some deer to take down. And if there is some deer to take down, he's going to hit the 300s. Indeed, there's a patch that's going to be 70 more bounty. So 300s, 320, 350 is the region that Linok is going to be in, which is a pretty good start with the Rus, I would say. Other side, Beastie is playing with the economy being no surprise about that one. The question becomes whether or not he's going to play with 2 town centers. Now, the first thing I'm noticing is that Beastie's front is very much open. This is pretty bad for the Abbasids here, because on Highview you have quite a lot of forests, And if you have some of those on the front, it makes it much easier for you to volley yourself up, and that definitely helps for the Abbasid player playing 2 town centers. But when your front is so open, you could be in trouble because of aggression. It's very difficult to defend your base. The other notable thing I want to highlight is that one of the berry patches belonging to Beastie are quite exposed. The other one is nice and sneaky up north over here, so you could potentially get some sneaky villagers out there, but it's not necessarily a great map for Beastie by any means. Golden Gate coming in here for Lenok, whereas on the other side, Economy Wing almost finished, and we are seeing no stone miners just yet for Beastie. The question is, are we going to see any in the near future? Scout goes down here from Beastie. That's a bit of a painful loss, because this way he's going to have limited vision, and the vision on this map is immensely valuable. You need to know what your opponent is doing. You need to know what's hiding in that stealth forest, because if you don't know it, you are going to be in trouble. Looks like Wheelbarrow is coming in for Beastie. He's also going towards the stone. He has gotten fresh foodstuffs as well, whereas on the other side, indeed, 350 is the bounty that Lenok is getting to. You see, Beastie is sending forward with his scout, and as things stand, this will be just a vanilla fast castle from the Roos here. He's going for the berries, though. Ooh. That I do not like. The thing here for Lenok is that he's not going professional scouts right now, which is basically a decision point, but going for the berries is probably not a great idea. He's running low on food under the town center, so he definitely needs some sort of additional food, but if you're just going for a vanilla naked fast castle here, not putting up aggression, because you're anticipating the opponent's Abbasses to just play 2 town centers, then you could just walk out for your hunt. If you're not expecting any aggression, you can take your hunt instead. Or you can ferry in the deer with professional scouts. Now, obviously, researching professional scouts is going to slow down the castle age progress of Lenok, and that's probably the reason why he doesn't want to take it. He just wants to bank up all that gold and want to get up to castle age as fast as possible. My concern for Lenok here a little bit is sustainability. Because if he's depleting those berries right now, he's out of sheep under the town center, and he's gonna have no food being ferried in by the scouts. Soon he's gonna have to walk out for the hunt anyways, and that's going to be his only source of food for the foreseeable future. There is enough stone for Beastie now to drop a second town center. I'm curious to see where it goes. In theory, he could go for the berries, and that's what he's doing. No risk it, no biscuit, I guess. That's a ballsy town center. Very far away from the starting base. This is an invitation for Lenok to go for a ram push against it with men-at-arms. As you see, he's dropping the barracks right now. So once he gets to castle age, this is an invitation to push this with men-at-arms, because this town center is wide open on the front. And of course, if you lose this, given the fact that this is not the starting town center, you can't really repair this. In fact, it is going to be a destroyed building if you lose that. So there is a lot of risk associated with building that town center right next to those berries up front. A couple of spearmen popped out for Beastie. As you see, he was harassing those villagers on the berries. Abbey of the Trinity on the way for Lenok, of course. He's gonna go for the relics. The barracks from Lenok was scouted by Beastie as well. And now Beastie, he's gonna have to start adding those villagers, but you still have to think about that semi-fast castle approach of the Abbasids here. You can't just boom on 2 town centers until you have like 60-70 vills. Usually when the Abbasids go for this 2 town center build, they need to get a good castle age timing, and they do that by clicking up at around 35, 37, 40 villagers. So that's the target right now for Beastie. Abbey up, and with that, first warrior monk is about to pop out for Lenok. He's chasing away the opponent's scout with 3 of his own, and that is men-at-arms indeed coming out. Now, the problem with the men-at-arms play here, and this is something that we have seen over and over again against Abbasids, is that by the time the men-at-arms arrive to the opponent's base, the Abbasids will be up to castle age, and they will respond to that with crossbowmen. So that's a concern right now for Lenok. By the time his men-at-arms arrives, his opponent is going to be in castle as well. For now, his first men-at-arms will probably just be dispatched to the right side to try and deal with these spearmen that are very frustrating, I must say. second barracks just not being built by Lenok, he got up to Castle Age really fast because, as you could see, he didn't even go for professional scouts. But there's a trade-off with that. And the trade-off is that you won't really have the resources to make those production buildings. So, while Lenok was in Castle Age for some time now, he's still just now building his second barracks. It was a very fast Castle Age, but he wasn't really able to capitalize on it simply because he doesn't have the resources to make the production buildings yet. He has the resources for a third barracks now. He's activating, or excuse me, that is Beastie activating the first tier of Golden Age. On the other side, you see Beastie getting ready for Castle Age. First relic being brought in right now by Lenok. He could also think about potentially trying to take down some boars for some extra bounty. Taking down the 2 boars would push him to the level 3 bounty over here. Meanwhile, we have the Man-at-Arms slowly pushing forward. Beastie delayed his Castle Age here a tiny bit by adding a couple of horsemen, but he sort of needs that because he's trying to contest those relics. He's trying to go a couple of horsemen out at least. And once you get the horsemen out, he can try to contest those relics, try to pick off the Vololo warriors that are just trying to get away with the relics. Villager count currently in the favor of a Beastie. As things stand though, the concerning thing for Beastie is that Lenok has 11 army as opposed to Beastie just having 9, and most of that is actually spearmen. So right now Beastie isn't really going to be able to push back a horde of men-at-arms. He can push back 1 or 2, and that is exactly what he's doing right now. But he's going to need crossbows very soon. But look at that. He's moving out for the berries on the north. That proxy berry spot is going to be difficult for the opponent to find. For now, Beastie is able to hold off 1 or 2 men-at-arms over here. He lost control over the berries on the front, so that's part of the reason why he moved all the way to the north. He's got a lot of sheep under the town center to work with, though, so he doesn't have to worry about it this much. And with that, he's almost up to Castle Age. About 75% complete is the Culture Wing. He's still taking some fights, but this is one of the bigger things here for Beastie. His town center is right next to the Stealth Forest, which means that the enemy could pop out with a bunch of army in front of his base anytime, and that town center would be threatened immediately. And this is the problem that I was referring to with Lenok. You will have to start taking that hunt at some point anyways, and now he's moving out with the hunting cabins. Now you could say, okay, it's fine, he still has map control. The concern here right now for Lenok is that the moment he loses map control, he loses his food eco. If he went for the professional scouts build, he would have been consuming hunt until now. And had he done that, we would be looking at a player that still has backup berries inside his base. Looks like the Warrior Monk is going to find the berry operation on the north. We'll try to yoink the relic. Might even see a Vololo. Lenok needs to try a Vololo here. Oh, he's getting away. Sad. He could have and should have tried a Vololo there. Because especially if Beastie isn't watching, he could have lost like 8 or so villagers. Looks like we still have no crossbows for Beastie on the battlefield. In theory, he has 2, at least according to the tracker up top, and there they are. They're finally joining the party. So this is where it gets a little concerning for Lenok. Lenok has 3 relics already under his control, and he's bringing back the 4th one, but he's currently only playing with men-at-arms, and the crossbows are now coming out, and his hunt is very much exposed. That's the main source of problems, or that could be the main source of problems for Lenok here, especially because Spearman Crossbowmen supported by Siege is difficult for a Roost to beat back. Men-at-Arms, Spearmen, and Warrior Monks is the only unit that Lenok has on the battlefield, and you get the feel that his unit composition is just not there at this point. He has to spread out and start taking additional, somewhat exposed resources. Nice defensive tower for him to protect the hunt. That's going to help quite a lot repel the Spearman push. But there's a push on the south coming in as well. Right over here, there's an attack. I wonder if there are any villagers out there. I think there are. There has to be. That's the food line. Yup. Here they are. There's 2 dead bodies around those berries. 2 more villagers got away. Spearman transition is being made by Lenok. This is something that he loves to do against like knights and arbalestry or so. Right now we're just seeing crossbows from the opponent mostly. But when the opponent goes for crossbows, Lenok is definitely one of the players that loves to add spearmen. Beastie is going to decap the only sacred site under control by the opponent. 3 relics in that Trinity by Lenok, and on the other side, we do have 0 relics for Beastie. On the other hand, Beastie's got a quite decent villager lead, 17 villagers to be precise, and now the man-at-arms and crossbows are coming in, and of course, Abbasids being able to make siege weapons on the battlefield will be a massive advantage as well. And now you see small groups of units circling around the base of Lenok, some cavalry on the south, some infantry in the north and on the east, and you could see Lenok struggling to assess and find all of those raids, because once you have that, there is going to be a window for Beastie to start doing damage. Looks like the Warrior Monk didn't deposit the 4th relic into that monastery, so the advantage from that 4th relic being controlled by Lenok is not yet harvested by him. And on the left side, it looks like we are seeing Beastie move towards the hunt. He's hiding the cavalry in the stealth forest, and I really love this one. Using the stealth forest to your advantage is a massive thing on this map, because if you think about that, being able to conceal what exactly you're doing from the opponent could be very dangerous for a player that has no idea what's coming his way. Spearmen are still guarding the berries at the south, and you see Lenok is going for the long walls. He's realizing that he needs to find a way to slow down this push, because he currently has no army to stop this. 17 army population versus 38, as the fortified palisades are coming in. Horsemen will try to slow this down, but there are multiple defensive towers. First battering ram, however, hitting the battlefield, and you see it's sort of popping out of the stealth forest. The tower is going to be able to spot this. Villagers are being pulled. Mangonel ready to set up, and this is dangerous for Lenok. He doesn't know what's in that forest. Mangonel gets a volley out, and the villagers will be forced back. That's the danger of the stealth forest. You try to push something, and then suddenly some nasty things pop out of that forest. And I think this is the moment where Lenok is realizing that, oh shoot, I'm being pushed here by Mangonel, some crossbows, some men-at-arms, and he's scrambling for defense. He's trying to get his own crossbows going, he's trying to get his own men-at-arms going, but his military population is almost 1/3 of the opponent's army numbers. Looks like the access to food is also being cut off, and now having no backup inside the base is a source of concern. There is the Warrior Monk coming in for a potential Volo, but with the crossbows and men-at-arms supported by Mangonel fire, he should not be able to do anything like that. It looks like it's going to be a relic deposited in the end. Beastie with a massive eco lead. Beastie with a massive army lead. Is there a way back here for Lenok? It's now or never. It's match point for Beastie, and he's in a very convincing and strong position, because now he's pushing the base of the opponent, and as you see, this is the worst time for a farm transition. When you're being pushed, you really don't want to invest into farms, but there is no other options for Lenok, because he no longer has access to the hunt. And this is the reason, I know I'm repeating myself, that I think professional scouts would have been slightly better here for Lenok. He wanted to get up to Castle Age really fast, skip professional scouts, but this basically means that he depleted his backup source of food, the berries. And now he has no access to the hunt. So he needs to start adding farms. He's got 1 food in the bank, and that's going to slow down his army build up quite a bit. 32 military population for him, 60 for Beastie, and Beastie's got 5 rams coming in. 5 battering rams soon to knock on those doors. He's taking down the first monastery, and Beastie has enough stone for a castle. Beastie's about to push this dagger deep enough to potentially knock out Lenok from the tournament. Lenok is not gonna give up on this easily, that's for sure. But does he have a choice? That's the question. Springolds are now set up for Lenok. No Springolds just yet for Beastie. He's just now building them on the battlefield. This buys a little bit of a breathing room here for Lenok. But here come the villagers. Can Beastie get that castle up? Can Lenok stop this push? Lenok's got 11 spearmen, 9 men-at-arms, 2 Springolds and 7 crossbowmen. There's a Warrior Monk for a potential Vololo. I picked up a relic. Castle just now being dropped. Here comes the infantry. Infantry is also spread out as well. Looks like the Warrior Monk is going to potentially try a Vololo here. It's getting away to the right side instead. Rams starting to knock on the Abbey of the Trinity. It's now or never for Lenok. He's got the Springolds to take down the battering rams. Mangonel's opening fire on the villagers. Vololo attempted on the right side. That's not going to work out. Springolds took down one of the Mangonels. The second Mangonel gets taken down as well. But the Abbey of the Trinity is under constant fire. The Warrior Monk carrying the relic is now down. And look at this. Abbey is under attack right now by 4 battering rams. Right next to it is a castle. And you're about to start pushing that town center if you're Beastie. Beastie is now sending in his forces to the opponent's eco, realizing that he can just start rampaging it and use that as a window to push the central town center. Springolds are still working wonders against those rams. 1 ram goes down, but the men-at-arms now ready to jump on the Springolds. Town center is now under attack. It's now or never for Lenok. It's now or never. He's got a second town center going, so He could, in theory, get back in terms of villagers if he can somehow hold this, but that's a big if right now, because the villager count is not looking great for him, the army numbers aren't looking great, and Beastie is happy. You can see his face cam. He knows very well that with that castle going up, there is going to be virtually no chance for Lidakor to stop this aggression, and he just needs to knock down the two landmarks. That's it. The town center that he's attacking right now in the Golden Gate, he's adding 2 more battering rams. Beastie QT. There is a counter castle coming in from Lidakor. Knights are about to take those villagers down. I'm not even sure if this castle is going up for Lidakor. And Lidakor, who had such a spectacular run in the playoffs of N4C, he took down Marine Lord 4-1. Something didn't work today for him, that's for sure, because this is not the strongest Lidakor that we have seen in this tournament. He's desperately sending every villager to try and get that castle up. Town center still standing, and the trebuchet is shelling the castles of Beastie right now. Looks like Lidakor is gonna get that castle up, but the price is just going to be too huge. 38 villagers left for him. Even if he somehow cleans this aggression up in his base, there is nothing left for him. Nothing at all. 24 army, 37 villager count, 157 population against 60. And am I seeing Lidakor shaking his head? I think I am, because at this point, it is just a matter of seconds until Beastie is going to finish the game, and the happiness on Beastie's face, he is going to take N4C in a 5-1 fashion. Very convincing gameplay throughout the entire Grand Finals, dominant in most of the games, punishing when it comes to exploiting the mistakes of the opponent, and Lidakor, who had a spectacular run in the playoffs, he is not going to go down 5-0, but in the end, Beastie QT takes the Grand Finals 5-1. Very convincing, and really, it's all about that consistency that Beastie delivered in the entire tournament. He was an underdog in this tournament, and every time I casted his games, I said things that I still believed are true. Beastie isn't doing anything special. He is the... I'm not meaning that as, you know, playing badly. I'm meaning that he's not bringing any unique strategies. No crazy ideas. No unique strategies. No new build orders. He's doing the most standard things humanly possible, but the execution is so clean. The reactions are so clean that it's very difficult, next to impossible, for the opponents to stop it. Beastie was the second place in the Swiss stage. He finished with 3-2 only, and he went into the playoffs having a shot at this one, but I don't think that many of us would have thought that he's going to be this dominant in the Grand Finals, even if he gets there. He took down Vortex in the semifinals 4-3 in a very close set, and now finishes the tournament 4-1 against, or excuse me, 5-1 against Lidakor. And as I said, it's the consistency. Every single set that Beastie went into, he played well and consistent. There were no sets for Beastie where he played amazing and then other day he played terrible. Every single day he played at a great level, and the level of consistency and being able to maintain that is something that helped a lot for him, because no matter who he faced, no matter what time of the day he played, he always put up a good fight. And even though some of the sets he lost, he got into the semifinals and from the second spot of the Swiss stage, and then gets into the Grand Finals, takes down Lidakor. Really, I think Beastie QT also represents another thing, and this is something that I really appreciate. Commitment in terms of time to the game. Beastie is playing this game for hours every single day. He really deserved the win like this. He's one of the most active players in the entire community, playing all day, all night, pretty much. He himself said when AoE 4 was released that he sort of feels to a certain extent addicted to the game, and that's a feeling that he hasn't felt for a long time for other games, and it shows. He plays the game a lot, and his gameplay is really benefiting from the time committed to the game. This is his first major S-tier Age of Empires 4 tournament victory. Came into this event as an underdog. He had to qualify. He qualified in the first qualifiers, I do believe. Indeed, in the first qualifiers, he first took down Lucifron. Let's just mention how he even got in there, because he has gotten through some very difficult opponents even in the qualifiers. Talk about Zerton, talk about Lucifron, talk about Kasva. He had to qualify, gets into the main event, then he has a sort of mixed start to the entire event here. He was able to take down Vortex 3-1 in the first round, takes down Lidakor 3-1 in the second round, but then suddenly something was, well, less ideal against Marine Lord, loses 3-1 against Marine Lord, takes a crazy set victory against Mista 3-2, and then in the end, he loses to the Muslim 3-2 in the fifth round. So, consistent, good performance in the group stage. And then the playoffs performance was just spectacular, especially this set, because very few mistakes were made by him. Looking at his games, it's crystal clean gameplay, straightforward but perfectly executed. The reactions are there as well, and that is one of the things that makes people great in Age of Empires. If your reactions are perfect, it's very difficult to beat you, and his reactions are always on point. But there's nothing to be disappointed about for Lidakor. I don't think that many of us would have expected Lidakor to win this tournament or even get into the Grand Finals. He put up a great fight. So Lidakor himself had to qualify for the main event. Let me check for a brief moment. Lidakor got through the second qualifiers. He took down Striker, he took down Robbie G, took down Taro, and even Soldier. He got I'm Soldier, who is a fairly good Age of Empires 3 and 4 player in the first round of the qualifiers, gets into the main event, and then in the main event, Lidakor opens up with a win against Mista 3-1, very convincing win over there. Then he lost to Beastie Cutie, as I mentioned, and then something collapsed. That was the thing here. In the middle of the event, something collapsed. Vortex destroyed Lidakor 3-0. Lidakor then comes back, however, and after that, with that defeat, that 3-0 against Vortex, something started for Lidakor. He takes down Viper 3-0, then takes down Lucifron 3-1, and then getting into the playoffs, that playoff form, a very crazy back and forth set versus Mista, takes down Mista 4-3, and then the huge upset of the tournament, 4-1 versus Marine Lord. That's going to be the highlight moment for him in this tournament, because I think many people, especially after seeing the Swiss stage performance of Marine Lord, expected Marine Lord to take this. Lidakor knocked out Marine Lord, got into the Grand Finals, but something went wrong today, because ultimately Beast is able to take it down. Still, huge shout out to both Lidakor and Beastie QT, because they played a good set here, but Beastie QT has proven much better in this one today. With that, he's the champion of N4C, and with that, this was my last cast of N4C as well. Hopefully you have enjoyed. The last 9 days were extremely exhausting. Every single set that happened, I solo casted. Everything is now available on YouTube forever, so you can check out every single set if you have missed out on anything. Hopefully you have enjoyed. I'd really appreciate if you press a like on this video or you subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it. If you're still here watching, then it's very likely that you have enjoyed it to a certain extent. I don't normally say these things because I'm not really a big sellout of myself, but I do appreciate some support in terms of that. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Thank you so much for sticking around during N4C. I was also working on systematically improving my casting as the days went forward. So I was always reviewing my previous day's casts, trying to adjust myself. I was reading the comments that were given, trying to make sure that every single thing in this tournament is going to be for the benefit of the viewers. So hopefully you have enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I will see you in EGC Golden League, because the next major S-tier event that's coming out for AoE 4, it's going to be the EGC Golden League, $125,000 prize pool. And I'll be in the broadcast crew. I won't be on the only caster, of course, for that, but I'll be in the broadcast crew, and I will likely be teamed up with Drongo, so we'll be watching some EGC Golden League in the future. Thank you so much as well, again, for sticking around. Stay tuned. Hopefully you enjoyed. Take care. See you next time.